Mike, Steve Palazzolo, Sam Monson. We're live on YouTube. I'm back in studio. Sam, we have all sorts of stuff to talk about today, Week 17 NFL.
You are. You're back in the building.
I'm back.
How was the Northeast?
It was great. It was up tempo, nonstop. A lot of people to see. You know, a lot of fun for the kids, and we're on the come down now. You know, coming back, and then my wife, she's crazy. She let me fly home a couple days early.
Rather than drive for like a million hours.
It was her idea. And I was like, yes, please.
Right.
So I'm here a couple days early. She's driving home today.
Ugh.
And she's trying to figure out, do I drive the whole 15 hours today or split it up, get a hotel? So Godspeed, Kelly. And so it's good to be back by myself for a couple days here. It's quiet. Yeah. But also sad at the same time.
Are you still over-caffeinated from yesterday, or are you just happy this morning?
It's amazing what you forget about your life when you go on like a little excursion for a couple weeks.
Yeah.
I
much
forgot
coffee goes in the machine.
We have a coffee machine. We have a little scoop, and I forgot that we used that scoop. So I used like a quarter cup instead, which is like quadruple what we usually put in. And I put the quarter cups in. I think I 4x'd my coffee intake yesterday by accident.
Yeah.
And I think it's still hitting me. It's still here.
This
is like draft night.
I feel like you're still
couldn't sleep last night. I think I'm on 3 hours, but we're ready to go. Week 17, a lot going on. I see that you bought some merch from the Check the Mic merch store here.
This is the some of the Shouty Show merch. So we got on the front, stop. Oh, hang on. There's a graphic in the way. There we go. Microphone in the way. There we go. Stop engaging with the hot takes. But on the back, there's also logo stuff.
Oh, that's sick. That is beautiful. If you've been affected by Shouty Show takes, there's more to say. I forget what it says.
Right.
That's awesome.
You get the idea.
Pick those up. I had said my whole family picked up Steve mugs. Had another friend pick up some Check the Mic merch, but it's all there. It's all in the description below, and the Shouty Show takes are in there. Some people suggesting we should do a little. I got no more use for this game. Maybe as a tagline. I mean, we've got the flexibility to add new stuff. So let us know if you've got any ideas for the shirt. Definitely should get the Lions one.
Right. Lions fan here to pay the bills.
In the Lions blue and the whole thing, Honolulu blue and the whole deal. So the whole show is brought to you by PrizePicks. Talk about them a little bit more. I made some mistakes on my PrizePicks lineup this week.
I think we each did.
Yeah, we both did.
Mistakes were made.
But I had some good ones. As well. You can download the PrizePicks app today. Use code CheckTheMic to get $50 instantly when you play $5. All right, man. You ready to get into this?
Yeah.
Anything else to talk about up top?
Yeah, probably, but let's go.
All right, so Week 17 was wild. It started on Christmas Day. We already covered the Christmas Day game. So if you're looking for a recap on Steelers-Chiefs or Ravens-Texans, you got to go back to our Week 17 preview show. We're going to start all the way back on Thursday night, though.
Okay.
Seahawks and Bears. It was 6-3. 6-3. Real NFL score here. And because of Sunday Night Football, which we'll talk about in a few hours or whatever. We'll talk about it at some point. Seattle has been eliminated from playoff contention, but they did get the win. They were still alive until late last night when the Commanders got the win, which put the Rams into the playoffs officially.
This feels like talking about, strength of win or whatever, tiebreakers seems like a new thing this year as opposed to, obviously it's been a tiebreaker before, but
it's coming into play.
I don't remember spending a lot of time focusing on that in previous years.
Yeah, yesterday was a strength of win. It was a day where they focused on strength of win, and one of the games that mattered for the Rams, they needed 3 or more out of 5 games to go their way, and one of them was the Jets and Buffalo.
Right.
Which, both teams played, and, they're both in the AFC, but that had an effect. Yeah, on the whole thing.
It seemed I don't remember focusing on that kind of thing previously. It's just been, you need to beat this team.
All I really have for notes on Seattle-Chicago weather game.
Yeah.
There was a lot of rain.
So throw it out.
So there was some stuff in there
immediately.
And Chicago's clock management was awful again. At the very end.
It is brutal. How do they keep doing that?
I got a question for you because we're generally nerd advocates here.
Nerd advocates.
More analytically sound.
Yeah.
But there's other times I think the nerds they nerd out a little bit too much. They're a little bit too spreadsheety.
We're each kind of nerd adjacent.
Spreadsheety.
We're each kind of nerd adjacent. You're a former professional athlete.
Yeah.
You're not. You don't come from nerd stock.
And you're
now. That being said,
IAFL second teamer.
Exactly. That being said, you did do quite a nerdy undergraduate degree, right?
Well, no, I was just business.
That's quite nerdy.
I
mean, it's nerdy relative to whatever the fake degrees they're all doing is.
Finance and
that's kind of it's with
IT
numbers and
stuff,
spreadsheety. It's nerdy.
Yeah.
Right. So you're fairly nerdy.
I'm a numbers guy generally.
There you go. That's my point.
Numbers. I'm a number centric.
Exactly. I am not a numbers person at all, other than I happened to be at the ground floor when PFF was created,
Right.
and therefore was around them quite a lot. But my undergraduate and postgraduate degrees are all word related. They're not numbers. The last sort of direct contact I had with numbers in my academic career was GCSE intermediate level maths. And the only reason it was intermediate level is because the teacher literally wouldn't allow me to do the higher level paper. So I'm very not a nerd person. Now, I might be nerdy in other ways, but not the usual math guy that people expect.
But you've been headhunted for, head of analytics jobs and everything. You're certainly nerd.
Evidently, my LinkedIn resume suggests qualifications that I don't possess.
The point I'm getting at here is that we're very much aligned with late game management, and we'll talk later. Greg Olson doing a really nice job of getting his head around.
Subtweeting Tom Brady.
Subtweeting Tom Brady maybe a little bit yesterday. Understanding late game decision making, right? I'm an advocate for nerds in the building helping teams make better decisions.
Yeah.
However, every week we come out of the weekend saying, man, clock management is at its worst. Clock management is terrible around the NFL. There's no excuse for it. When to take timeouts and everything. You have more people than ever on the headset prepping you during the week. I am surprised that clock management is still as bad as it gets, despite, I know the Bears have smart people in the building. I know the Falcons have smart people in the building. They did it last night on Sunday Night Football, when to take a timeout, when to not. And I know the game's quick. It's happening quick, and you got to make quick decisions, but these guys should be more prepared than ever.
Yeah, I think specific to the Bears, this is the kind of thing that doesn't get fixed in a week, when you hear the overall trend with everything that's gone on there is that details, standards were allowed to slip immediately. It was institutionally right away, nobody focused on details from the install, right? So everything was sloppy. Everything's been sloppy all season long. It's not coherent. It's not organized. It's not planned. Nobody has any idea. Everyone's doing it on the fly by the seat of their pants at all times, right? So you go, okay, well, that was Shane Waldron's fault. Let's get rid of him. And no, actually, it's Eberflus's fault. Let's get rid of him. It doesn't really matter at this stage whose fault it was. It's happened, and there's no fixing that mid-season. You could obviously go, okay, this is how we're going to do game management stuff. This guy's going to focus on it. He's going to prepare us. We're going to have it all set, and this will be a slick, machine-like operation. I just don't think you can do that in Week 16, right? So now I think you are seeing just effects of previous failures as opposed to, an additional failure that's been added along the way. It's just the same thing. This is an August problem that's still biting them because they screwed up back then.
Yeah, so this is the Bears specifically. I was just speaking generally around the league.
It's definitely an issue. I think for the Bears, that's why, because, Eberflus screwed up so bad that it literally cost him his job, right?
Right.
You'd be like, how do you not learn from that? It's because you can't really, it's really difficult. I mean, you could, I guess, but it's very difficult, I think, to institutionally correct that mid-season and have here's the flow chart of information that's going to happen on game day now, to install that in week 15 in amongst the other 58 things you got to do, particularly for a guy who's gotten consecutive promotions within a month and is already, occupying 2 jobs ahead of what he's supposed to be doing, based off when they hired him, to then add on, okay, now you also need to structurally implement this entire workflow situation just for this end of game thing. It's unlikely that's going to happen.
Geno Smith, he's been battling injury the last couple weeks here. Another awful red zone decision that he got away with early. Some turnover-worthy plays in there from Geno. Not a good game for either quarterback here. I thought Zach Charbonnet ran pretty hard for Seattle. Enjoyed his work. I also hate when I feel like the running back is playing well and I look up and he's under 4 yards per carry. That's what he ended up with, but he ran well. So Seattle gets the win. Defensive-minded rain game on Thursday Night Football. It kept Seattle alive for a minute. They're 9-7, but like I said, officially eliminated from playoff contention. And the Bears, hey, they fall to 4-12, and per Tankathon, now at number 9, the 5th of 5 4-win teams in the draft picture right now.
Spectacular game from Kyler Gordon from them, who's been really good for them, period, like on defense. Their sort of slot corner, another outstanding performance by him. Overall, not a pleasant season for Chicago.
Anything else on this one?
No, I mean, it's a pretty ugly game. We were hoping, I guess, for more from Seattle. They got a win. They kept themselves alive, but it didn't matter anyway because the Rams clinched.
Well, let's talk about that game. Saturday night, Rams get the win over the Arizona Cardinals, the third game of the Saturday tripleheader. It was 13-9. Rams get the win over the Cardinals. Interesting run here by the Rams since scoring 44 against the Bills a few weeks ago. They've now scored 44 points over their last 3 games, Sam. 44 points over 3 games, and they've won all of them, giving up less than 10 points in all of them. So the Rams get the win. They move to 10-6, and like I said, they win this on Saturday night, and then they're watching on Sunday. Sean McVay said that he'd be watching. Les Snead's got a video out there about, oh man, that was terrible. He was watching Sunday Night Football. They needed 3+ things to happen, and the third thing happened last night. Commanders beat the Falcons on Sunday Night Football, and that solidified the playoff spot in the NFC West for the Rams, meaning they go into Week 18 with the ability to rest starters in their matchup against Seattle, which, again, if things didn't fall their way yesterday, that would have been for the division next week or close to it.
Right. I'm trying to work out are the Rams formidable or not as like a playoff threat, because we've seen them at their best. I mean, they've beaten Minnesota handily. Like they have the most conclusive win over the Vikings this season, and it's one of 2, right? Like Detroit, the other number 1 seed contender in the NFC, and the Rams are the 2 teams that have beaten Minnesota this year, and the Rams did it most conclusively of all. That was the one game where Minnesota genuinely wasn't really they weren't really in it, really. I mean, that was the game with the late face mask, but even that was like just to keep the game alive. It wasn't, the Vikings were in position or whatever. They were backed up in their own end zone and were in trouble and needed that drive to get anything done, and the drive was taken away from them because of a blown face mask call. But anyway.
Face mask.
Huh?
A little face mask there, yeah.
Right. Like the Rams took care of them more conclusively than anybody. They also put 44 points on Buffalo and looked unstoppable in that game. But then you have other games where it's like they don't look particularly good at all on either side of the ball. So I'm trying to, but because of all this, weirdness with all the good teams being in the NFC North, they're the 3 seed. Like,
yeah,
they're going to be hosting a game. They're the 3rd seed, and they've shown high points of being able to knock off the best teams in the NFL in either conference. And yet they're coming into the playoffs off of a few sort of underwhelming games against not necessarily dominant teams.
The other thing I'm trying to figure out is the Matthew Stafford factor here. Like just a few weeks ago, this was week 14. Again, they go toe-to-toe with the Bills, put up 44 points, and I don't think Stafford missed a throw. I mean, he's throwing the ball into finite windows, unreal, 93.5 PFF passing grade, almost 400 yards passing. And since that point, he's been terrible. And there's a rain game with the Rams, but I mean, it was just like misreading coverages, 6 turnover-worthy plays per PFF over the last 3 games. I thought maybe back in the Dome, this could help a little bit back in the controlled environment in LA. Just kind of an uneven passing attack. But I think from a Rams perspective, it is encouraging that they can win with defense, that they can, given the youth movement. And it is a fascinating 2-year study with the Rams, how they've, I've said this a few times now, but had the emergence of Kyron Williams at running back, had the emergence of Puka Nacua on offense last year, and now defensively, they spent 4 draft picks on the defensive line, and you're seeing Braden Fisk and Jared Verse, you're seeing those guys, you're seeing Cam Kinchins on the back end, and so the game ended with Akilla Witherspoon making the game-ending diving interception on the ball that hit Trey McBride in the helmet, and it was close. It was a close battle, but man, you see in the Rams defense, start to make some plays here. They're a young defense.
They really are, all of them. I mean, you look at the top kind of pressure leaders for the team yesterday, and it's Jared Verse, Byron Young, Braden Fisk, like 3 draft picks over the last 2 years.
Yeah.
They're young playmakers making plays, and that's, with a non-dominant game from a guy like Kobe Turner, who obviously was so good a year ago. That young defensive line is extremely good and formidable. And then, Cam Kitchens has made a bunch of plays. Now, the one he made yesterday, the interception on 4th and long, it's like, just bat that down. You actually cost them 30, 40 yards of field position, which almost came back to bite them. Like if Trey McBride had his head around slightly earlier, or Kyler Murray been able to delay the pass a beat, and instead of it clanging off his face mask and getting picked off, that's a touchdown, you'd be looking at Cameron Kitchens and saying, dude, your play, just bat it down. That cost us quite dearly here. But anyway, he's made a few plays this season. They have got quite an impressive young core on defense now.
It was Trey McBride who did have a huge game and finally got into the end zone. Right? They were feeding him in the tight red zone, as we suspected. He gets his first touchdown reception on the screen pass, but he finished with 12 catches for 123. Was a little hard on himself at the end there because it was the ball that goes off his face mask. I don't know if you saw what Steve Smith, friend of the show, was saying. Steve was blaming Kyler Murray on that.
I mean, the ball came out early and fast at him.
For rushing it a little
It was
bit.
difficult.
Yeah.
However, I mean, I told you, like, there's that old adage that if it hits you in the hands, you got to catch it. And I've always thought that was kind of ridiculous because sometimes, it hits you. Like, if it hits you in your hand when you're going that way and there's one hand back there and it hits the hand, it's like you shouldn't necessarily be expected to catch that. But if it hits you in the head, right in the face, I think you might be able to. I would have more sympathy for the adage, if it hits you right in the face, you should catch it, than if it touches your hand, you should catch it. That's all I'm saying. So, was it difficult? Yeah. Should he have been able to catch it?
So
maybe.
you're blaming McBride.
I'm just saying, in the world of, things that the ball should touch without hitting the ground, I have more sympathy for the idea that if it hits you smack dead in the face, you should catch it, than if it hits your hand in any description, you should catch it. But anyway, great game from McBride again, unfortunately in a losing effort, but that guy's been dominant this season.
Yeah, he's been outstanding. Pretty nice game from Marvin Harrison Jr., but not enough. I mean, Arizona, they were down early. They fought back into it and had a chance to win at the end. And, just to repeat, when you look at the run that the Rams have been on, beat the Saints 21-14, then you have the 44-42 game against the Bills, which is like the anomaly here. And then the last 3 wins for the Rams, 12-6 in San Francisco, 19-9 against the Jets, and 13-9 against the Arizona Cardinals. They've kind of morphed into this, ball control, play defense type of team. And I'll say it again, if you could just bottle up good Stafford, you say, hey, I don't know how dangerous the Rams are.
Right.
Puka Nacua looks outstanding. The mistake I made with PrizePicks was thinking Cooper Kupp might come back. Again. From a reception standpoint. They're not featuring him
at all.
And he doesn't look the same. Like when you watch him move versus Puka, it's like Puka looks like the year 2, very athletic, ready to go. I mean, he's just doing everything well pretty much, and Cooper Kupp looks like more of an afterthought in this offense.
Kupp has 4 catches in the last 3 games. And it's not like he's not playing. Like, he's out there almost every snap, and yet it's just the ball is going to Nacua
they're
every time.
Rotating him out more than they have, I would say. So
sure, but he's playing a lot. I mean, we're not seeing somebody that this is not a product of them scaling his workload back. This is a product of them going somewhere else with the ball.
Yeah. So look, I think the Rams are dangerous. Again, because I think when you add up the totality of Matthew Stafford's season, it's probably on the lower end of his recent performances, but you just never know when you're going to get the high end from him.
Well, one thing that's happening, I mean, he's dodging a lot of bullets recently in terms of turnover-worthy plays. Remember that 49ers game where they won in an ugly performance and he didn't have an interception, but the first thing he said when he came to the desk, to interviewed afterwards, is like, I threw the ball right at the chest of a couple of 49ers early in the game.
Yeah.
Once I stopped doing that, cleaned it up right up, which is true. And he's had like 6 turnover-worthy plays in the last 3 games. And that, I mean, I think we tend to forget that is a trait of Stafford's career. Like last year, cut way back on them. Like had very few turnover-worthy plays, under 2% according to PFF. But his career baseline is 3.2, which is a pretty damn high number, particularly for a guy that gets talked about as one of the best quarterbacks in the NFL. And even when they first acquired him, when the Rams first acquired him, and overall in the season, the numbers were sort of through the roof, but I don't know that his performance was necessarily that much better than in previous Stafford years. And then in the playoffs, he really clicked into better Stafford. But even in the playoffs, remember, he put the ball in the hands of a Tampa Bay defender in the end zone, which didn't get caught, which could have completely changed the entire outcome of that Super Bowl.
He threw the one, the Niners dropped one.
Right.
Down the field as well in the NFC Championship. Yeah.
Multiple NFC opponents.
And he was great. I mean,
run.
I thought he was outstanding on that.
That was the best Stafford.
Run.
That run was exactly what they were looking for in terms of that's the run we don't think Jared Goff is capable of. We get Stafford in specifically for that ceiling, but even in that run, he gave each defense he faced an opportunity to take the ball away and change the outcome of the game. That is a feature of Stafford's game and has generally always been, and I think we're seeing it more this season. Again, even though he hasn't actually been punished for those in the last few weeks.
So the Rams started 1-4, Sam.
Yes.
1-4, have a week 6 bye. They are
and the 3 seed.
9-2.
I think I saw recently a stat that said something like they are the second or the only team to have consecutively made the playoffs, having started something like 1-4 2 consecutive years, because they did this last year as well.
Yeah, starting slow.
So it's something like they're the only team in NFL history to make the postseason 2 years straight, having started 1 and whatever.
Last year they started, the first team since the 2020 Washington football team to start 1-4 specifically. Last year the Rams started 3-6.
Okay.
And then made the playoffs.
So it's something like maybe it was X games below 500, starting 3 games below 500 and make the playoffs 2 years in a row, something like that.
So congrats to the Rams. They're in the playoffs. They'll play Seattle in what amounts to, I think it's meaningless, right? It's not going to can't affect seeding. So meaningless Week 18 game.
Can probably affect Seattle's draft position, but not by much. And it's in the middle of the first round, so who cares?
So we're going to get into the rest of the AFC, or we're going to get into the AFC, their playoff picture. But Week 18, Sam, we're going to be in a different spot. We're not going to actually be here next week on Monday morning. We're going to be at Circa, out in Vegas. So it's going to be a little different Week 18. And you can come join us. So we are thrilled to be sponsored by our friends over at Circa Resort and Casino. It's one of the premier destinations for sports fans in Vegas. And we're going to be there for the whole weekend of Week 18 of the NFL. Starting on Friday night, we'll have a little meet and greet with you, the fans, whoever wants to show up at Circa Friday night. The 2 NFL games on Saturday, we'll be there watching and probably recording live right after that with our instant reaction. And then what better place to be than Circa for Week 18 with all the 1 o'clock Eastern games, all the 4 o'clock Eastern games, Sunday Night Football, Lions and Vikings. We're going to be there watching all the games, and then we're going to do our show, this recap show, right there from Circa. It'll be Sunday night, so it'll be late Sunday night instead of first thing Monday morning. If you're a Monday morning viewer, listener, it'll be there for you. But we're going to do it early. We're going to do it that Sunday night right from Circa. So really excited to check out Stadium Swim, Legacy Club, some of the best views in Vegas, all at Circa. And you can join us as well. So you go to the YouTube description, circalasvegas.com/huddle up at overhang is the link. Choose the Los Angeles weekend because it's the Chargers in town. And, click that week and come join us next week at Circa, Friday through Sunday. We're going to be hanging out over there.
Yeah, I can't wait to check out an NFL slate from that sports book. The place is insane. If you even just go to their website, look at the pictures of the thing, it's utterly ridiculous. If you guys can get out to Vegas, if you're in Vegas, absolutely come and hang out. That place is an incredible place to catch football games from.
So, yeah, we're excited to be doing that next week over at Circa. All right, let's get into the AFC playoff picture. We're going to start with Saturday. The first game on Saturday, Los Angeles Chargers 40, New England Patriots 7. Chargers moved to 10-6. They clinched the playoff berth. The final wild card seed is still wide open. We'll talk about all those teams in a minute here. But the Chargers with an emphatic win.
Yeah.
Justin Herbert, they came out chucking it, man. 26 of 38, 281, 3 touchdowns for Herbert. Ladd McConkey with 8 catches for 94 yards and 2 scores. And Chargers just really dominant in this one.
Yeah, I mean, emphatically taking care of business, the Chargers did in this game. Just came out and absolutely murdered the Patriots. The broadcast said that apparently 13 teams were rooting for the Patriots in this game between playoff and
Wasn't
draft
the broadcast.
implications.
That was Ross Tucker. That was our friend Ross.
It's true. Ross Tucker on the broadcast.
Yes.
Yeah, they'd counted it up between the people rooting for the playoff, stay alive in the wild card and draft position.
Yeah.
13 teams had a rooting interest in this game. It's pretty impressive.
Patriots let everybody down.
They did, absolutely. Everybody, including themselves.
Badly.
Including themselves.
Their only touchdown was a free play from Drake May, which is pretty slick, throwing it up
nice
to
play.
Demario Douglas, but that was it.
The other
got hit in the head early.
Yeah.
And, I mean, look, there's no other reason to watch Patriots games right now other than Drake May. So I was disappointed when he went out. It was good to see him come back, but just some awful mistakes from the offense and just bad football by the Patriots. And the other, depressing stat that I put out there, if you're a Patriots fan, Ladd McConkey had 8 catches for 94 yards. That's like Jalen Polk's season
career
production
so
far this year. Both picked 3 picks apart in the second round. And New England had Ladd McConkey and traded down to get Polk.
Yeah, that's one of those ones that, doesn't. It's unfortunate how they're sort of connected players and the results are not going their way. From a process standpoint, you would say that's good process. You can trade back, add draft picks, still get a wide receiver. There's usually not much difference between them. Only now it's like one guy looks good, your guy hasn't done anything, and in fact has been mocked for dropping everything that comes his way and been benched, and it's a whole catastrophe.
It's going to be such an interesting hindsight view of that receiver run, right? Because after Brian Thomas Jr. went, and it was Xavier Worthy and Keon Coleman and Ricky
a lot
Pearsall
of decisions
and Ladd
were made.
McConkey and Jalen Polk and all these receivers in that, 27 to 50 range. And then looking back on the teams and there's a lot of trades there, so there'll be a lot of hindsight analysis there.
A lot of interesting decisions were made in that run of wide receivers. The other interesting thing that came out of the broadcast, what did you make of this? Where they had started the thing saying, Ramondre Stevenson's not going to be starting here. It's going to be Antonio Gibson. He's going to get the gig. And then right away, Stevenson starting. Apparently, the broadcast had been outright told by the Patriots that we're benching Ramondre because he had a 7th fumble, and we're sending a message that there needs to be accountability. That's unacceptable. We're benching him. We're giving Gibson the start. And then they just upped and reversed that decision and put Stevenson out there anyway.
But Gerard Mayo has had – this is why he might be on the hot seat after year 1. And New England media keeps bringing it up. Supposedly he got this vote of confidence barring a late season disaster. And so now the New England media is every single week – there's like him misspeaking and then corrected himself or, straight up either lying or just not remembering that he was going to bench Ramondre. I don't know. And then, posing the question, is 40-7 a disaster? Is this disastrous enough?
It was like barring, the side-by-side images. The left image is barring a late season disaster and the right image was simply the box score.
Honestly, when you're talking about the things that have changed as far as offseason decisions, I think this New England game, we'll get to the Colts game, which might have offseason implications as far as jobs go, and the Cowboys, right? Like we were painting this picture about the Cowboys, maybe bringing McCarthy back, and they get whooped by the Eagles. That stuff can change quickly, and this could be something for New England. So last thing on the Patriots, they're currently number 1 in the NFL draft order because of all the other movement. The Giants winning, the Raiders are now at 8. They were sitting there with 1 just 2 weeks ago. New England is one of 4 teams that has 3 wins. They have all the tiebreakers right now. They've got the number 1 pick, followed by Tennessee, Cleveland, and then the Giants. New England will play Buffalo next week, though, who clinched the 2, presumably playing backups. It'll be interesting to see what New England does. Number 1 overall pick, probably it's extremely valuable for them if a team wants to trade up and get a quarterback.
I will say the other thing about this is, so Stevenson barely played in the game. Like, if you were looking at it in terms of workload, they did fundamentally bench him. It's just that people, starting is the first snap, right? And he was out there for the first snap, which makes this, if that's what happened, and in their eyes they did bench him, but he still got given the first carry of the game, that is staggeringly stupid if that's what happened.
It is a benching, though. He had 2 carries.
That's what I mean.
Gibson had 12.
So, but if they come out of that and they're like, we did bench him, what are you talking about? And gave him the first carry of the game, that's even dumber than if they'd
why.
said they benched him and then didn't.
It's almost like they forgot. Like, oh, shoot, Ramondre's not supposed to be in there.
Or he just talked like he went, was it Jair Alexander who just talked his way into the coin toss as a captain?
That is something I don't want to get, when we finally get Zach or Bobby on the show, who's in charge of
making sure the guys
just running back substitutions generally. Like as an offensive coordinator, you're just calling a play, right? How quickly do you know, hey, in Zach's case, it's Algier now, it's Bijan right now. Like how quickly is that decision being made?
Even who's making it?
And who's making it,
I'm calling the play. Who decides whether it's Bijan or Algier going out?
Well, then you get, these guys like, hey, I need a breather.
Yeah.
The play call's already in, right? So you're calling a play, and you might expect the starter. I don't know.
Anyway, but this is that's a terrible look, regardless of the explanation. Essentially, is my point. The other interesting thing. There's a whole stack of information from the broadcast for some reason in this game. Maybe it was just because the game was a beatdown and I wasn't actually paying attention to the football.
NFL Network seems to really prepare their people. And the NFL Network announcers bring the information to the table.
In a way, certain other teams don't.
Anyway, it's what I've sensed.
The other thing that was fascinating to me is apparently Alex Van Pelt said that they were deliberately not calling any form of designed run for Drake May, specifically because they didn't want to get him hurt. And essentially saw the value in every rep that he plays this season, right? Like he just, all the reps are important for Drake May's development. So we don't want to get him injured by calling design runs because that's a risk. Have you watched Drake May play football? Like you calling a design run or not is having zero impact on whether Drake May gets hurt. As evidenced by, look at the headshot that he took by getting cracked on a scramble. Like you might as well call the design run, which is at least giving him some kind of positive yardage and relying on him protecting himself.
He's got to do a better job of protecting himself, and I think that's a smart move by New England to just say, we don't need the QB sneaks right now. We don't need the design runs. But you also, when May scrambles, he's got to do a better job of.
But he's scrambling so much and exposed to so many hits anyway by virtue of having the worst offensive line in the NFL.
So it's good not adding to that.
Is it?
Yes.
Because I don't know that it's moving the needle. What it's doing is removing a potential crutch from the offense so that he's in a disadvantageous situation more often and probably not moving the needle on whether or not he's getting hit.
I'm not going to spend any more time on that, but we did this with the whole Jalen. I thought Jalen Hurts' first half of his career as a starter in 2022, they were throwing the ball around the yard, kind of saving the stuff that they knew he was good at, and it was better for his development. I think New England has actually handled Drake May pretty well given the circumstances this year. Next year, you could break out the red zone keepers, and you'll have more creativity with the offense. Right now, just get him drop back reps and let him go. Haven't talked enough about the Chargers, but hey, they're in the playoffs. Year one of Jim Harbaugh. As of right now, we're talking about Harbaugh 2 for this year, or 4 total, whatever it is. Chargers would go to Baltimore as of right now. That's still subject to change given what happens in Week 18. But Chargers at the 6 seed right now, Ravens currently at the 3 seed, would be a rematch from Monday Night Football a few weeks back.
Yeah, their defense showed up for the first time in a few weeks, which is big. Okay, it was against the Patriots and their lackluster offense, but still an important development, if nothing else.
Derwin James with 2 fourth-down sacks.
Beast.
As a safety. Always fun seeing Derwin make plays.
That was his best game in a long time.
Yeah, and stay healthy, which is great.
Which you just jinxed.
Midweek injury coming up here.
Mm-hmm.
All right, let's get to the second game of the Saturday triple header. Cincinnati Bengals 30, Denver Broncos 24. This might be the best game of the season. Bengals moved to 8-8. Broncos fall to 9-7. Remember, Bengals needed to win to stay alive. They do it. And these teams are both battling for that final wild card spot. It comes down to the Broncos, Bengals, or the Dolphins. The Colts are officially eliminated. Denver win, and they're in next week against Kansas City, presumably against Kansas City's backups. Cincinnati has to play Pittsburgh, have to win that game. Cincinnati would also need Miami to lose. So the order of operations here is Denver, they win and they're in. If they lose, it's on Miami. If they get the win, they're in. And then if Miami loses, Cincinnati has to win, and they're in. If everybody loses, Denver gets the 7 seed. What a game this was.
Yeah, I
Bengals,
mean,
Broncos.
a lot of things needed to break Cincinnati's way for them to make the playoffs. A lot of things still need to break their way for them to make the playoffs, but they did. Like a few of them already went their way, including winning this game. Remember, way back, it was like even if they win, they only get up to 14% to make the playoffs. It's up to 17%. So a few other things that had to go their way have gone their way, but it's still unlikely based off all the things that still need to happen. This game, so the first half was entirely drab, nothing really happening. It felt like the entire first half was just Cincinnati failing in the red zone repeatedly. Denver.
Red zone and fourth down. Really.
Yeah.
That was it.
Right. And maybe based off later in the game, we knew why they were going for so many fourth downs because their kicker can't be trusted to make a short kick. But yeah, Denver held multiple fourth downs early in the game. Fourth and goal they held. They did a really good job. The Bengals just couldn't convert at all. And the first half was kind of fairly nondescript. And then whatever they were, whether it's motivational talking or, let's take a Red Bull at halftime, everybody was transformed after the half, both sides of the ball. And the second half was insane.
I thought it was it was 7-3 Bengals at the half. I still thought it was a really good game. I thought it was it's not, we joke about it's like the 44-42 game. That's not necessarily the best game in the NFL. You can have a good, hard-hitting game. I thought this was because the Broncos kept making those stops and the Bengals were moving the ball. The Bengals were getting stopped on the goal line. I broke out the stat. I had no idea what I was going to find when I looked this up because it felt like Cincinnati was really not equipped to run the ball in tight goal-to-go situations. I looked it up. I don't know if you saw the stat I posted. This year, their running backs, Cincinnati, goal to go, so 1 or 2 yards, goal to go, 12 carries for -5 yards this season in 4 touchdowns. That's what Cincinnati has. They're not equipped to run it in. They were getting stuffed up front, but then they finally converted some fourth downs, and Joe Burrow hits T. Higgins. They go up 7. Bo Nix comes back, though. And this is all the rookies this weekend was so impressed with how cool they were under pressure, how cool they were when circumstances weren't going their way. Nix has a few throws he would want back in this game, but he comes back to tie it, hitting Marvin Mims for 51 yards. The ball traveled, 68 yards in the air, 67 plus?
Yeah, 67, I think.
An absolute bomb from Bo Nix, but Marvin Mims getting behind the defense. That tied it up. Then the Bengals come back again. They go up 7, and then with 14 seconds left, and we'll get into, some of this late game decision making and everything. The Broncos come back again. Bo Nix to Marvin Mims, 25 yards, contested catch in the end zone, and eventually, after all sorts of stuff happens in the end in overtime, Burrow hits T. Higgins for the game winner for 3 yards. But the late game decision making and situation stuff also not great in this game, particularly for Cincinnati, which let Denver back in for that game tying touchdown at the end of regulation.
Yeah, I mean, Bo Nix was impressive in turn. That 67-yarder, obviously ridiculous, which highlights the arm strength and the physical talent that he does have that I think gets overlooked too much. I mean, we've seen earlier in the season and in this game, the guy's ability to scramble and make plays athletically is really impressive. He's not just the kind of marginal athlete or more athletic than, people give him credit for. He's legitimately athletic. He makes plays where he takes off and embarrasses high-level athletes on defense. And evidently, he's got the arm to throw a perfectly in-stride pass, 67 yards downfield. And that was one where, it was 67 yards, and it needed to be to get it to hit Mims in stride.
To get behind the defense.
If it was shorter than 67 yards, it would have forced Mims to hold up and, wait on the ball. To get it to where Mims was going to end up, it needed to be 67 yards. That was a really, really impressive throw. Okay, he had a couple where he missed. He missed a shot to Cortland Sutton in a sort of cover 2 hole shot late in the game. Now they got the touchdown anyway on that drive, but that was an easier pass that he didn't quite connect on. He missed Troy Franklin in overtime, right? That should have been a big play. So he missed some as well, but really impressive play to keep themselves alive in the game and kind of repeatedly answer.
Reminds me a little bit of Ryan Tannehill. I always cite the one year, maybe 2016 or 17. He had maybe Tannehill, the 2 best throws in the NFL that year. and nobody looked at Tannehill and was like, oh, big arm talent guy.
Right.
But on those particular throws, it was like 50-plus yards while getting hit on a deep post, showing that he had it in him. That's what I felt from Nix. Like, nobody's expecting this from him because there is so much dink and dunk to his game. Same thing at Oregon, the way they've played with Denver. I think it is a great, it's great to show the potential here. He had a nice touchdown to Sutton and the 2 to Mims, showing the ability to get the ball down the field. Nix also had a couple incredible scrambles, like to help to keep these drives alive and everything. There were so many key plays in this game where if you looked back, be like, well, this was the key play. Patrick Surtain forcing a fumble on T. Higgins. That was a key play at one point that, eventually didn't matter. But at the very end, the Bengals get into field goal range. It's a tie game, and they have a chance to run out the clock and kick a field goal. Chase Brown runs the ball. Instead of going into the end zone to go up 7 with a minute something left, he goes down, probably smartly at the time, except he goes down and hurts his ankle, rolls up on himself. And the Broncos had 1 timeout left. Had he just slid and not gotten hurt, Broncos would have used their final timeout. The Bengals kneel it out and presumably hit a 22-yard field goal to end it. Presumably, because Cade York eventually missed, a 33-yarder.
Presumably, though not definitively.
But not definitively. But because Chase Brown got hurt on the play, Denver didn't have to use the timeout. The Bengals had to use their timeout, and then Cincinnati sneak it in on the next play from Joe Burrow. And I don't know if it was a bigger mistake because Denver probably would have had the ball back. Their choice was get the touchdown, give Denver about a minute 20, so that's the sneak, or take a knee, kick a field goal. You're up 3, and you give Denver about 50 seconds with no timeouts. I think that's about a push there, and the Bengals chose the touchdown, and then Denver goes down and eventually hits the game-tying touchdown to send it to overtime.
I think it's always dangerous when you're talking about sort of effectively sacrificing a play because you assume you can get the touchdown on the next play. Like, I don't know that you can ever assume you're going to get the touchdown, even though it's like you just talked about all the Bengals.
You're talking about Chase Brown?
No, the Bengals choosing to score as opposed to the broadcast was sort of saying, well, you could just take a knee, right? Burn a play, force Denver to call a timeout or chew up some clock and then score the next play, right? But I don't know that you can't just assume you're going to get the touchdown.
Yeah.
Like this one looked easy and they walk it right up the middle and you're like, well, why didn't you chew some more clock? They could have got stuffed. You just talked about all the plays where they've been stuffed from the 1 or the 2 yard line. If that had happened, they would have needed the next down to score anyway. Like, take the touchdown when you can take the touchdown, and if that costs you some time, you just have to live with that. I think they just got unfortunate by Brown going down injured, which caused a timeout as opposed to being able to force Denver to use theirs. That's just unlucky, I think. I don't know that you can then screw around with burning it down, assuming you can get a touchdown whenever you want one.
And even before Chase Brown ran the ball and went down, there were people suggesting you just kneel it 3 times and kick the field goal and get out of there. But as we saw in overtime, backup kicker, Cade York, and gets the bad doink. So it was an incredible back and forth game because Cincinnati had a chance to win in overtime, miss the field goal, and then still get the ball back. And Joe Burrow, ice water in his veins as well, hits T. Higgins up the sideline and then hits T. Higgins for the game-ending touchdown, not letting it get to kicks. But even that game-ending decision-making from Denver's point of view was interesting as well.
And then so you've got Joe Burrow enhancing his MVP case. And also, people are talking about Patrick Surtain as a Defensive Player of the Year candidate this year. I think in large part because there's not a clear pass rushing, obvious answer. It's sort of a wide open field. And people go, hey, what about Patrick Surtain playing really well? He effectively did a really good job in Jamar Chase in this game, allowing Riley Moss to deal with T. Higgins, and that didn't go so well for Riley Moss. But an impressive performance from Surtain and Joe Burrow in these runs towards the awards.
Yeah, Surtain he only gave up a couple first downs in this one. Burrow completely missed Chase. It's one of the reasons I don't like post game. Surtain only gave up this number of receptions and this number of yards. It easily could have been an extra catch. But overall, I mean, the Bengals were not looking his way. Riley Moss was targeted 16 times. And he had been the guy that had solidified the cornerback position opposite Surtain, and was why Denver's defense had been one of the league's best. But he got attacked.
And lost
often in his return. So look, Surtain's awesome. Had the forced fumble in there, so I get that, right? Other thing I wanted to talk about, Burrow's MVP candidacy, and then what Denver's decision making in overtime. Because if they had tied, they were getting into the playoffs.
Yes.
And Sean Payton, I didn't actually listen to much of what he said post game, but it doesn't feel like the guy who's just going to play for the tie to get into the playoffs. Like, I think, and a lot of coaches are kind of like that. You play to win, but they had a chance with like a little over 2 minutes left. If they got one first down, they could have kneeled it out, tied, gotten into the playoffs, and eliminated Cincinnati on the spot. They go 3 and out though, and that's what let Cincinnati get that final drive opportunity there.
I think he definitely, if they got the first down, I think he absolutely would have just played for the tie. I don't think he's extending the game. In fact, I'm not sure any coach in the NFL would have. If the tie gets you the win, or gets you into the postseason, you're taking the tie. Nobody's playing for anything else.
I want to touch on the Burrow thing really quick, because I've brought this up a few times. Theoretically, if he's playing this well and the rest of his team is letting him down, and they're letting him down as far as wins and losses. I understand he has probably the best duo in the NFL, the best 1-2 punch in Jamar Chase and T. Higgins. Everything else is letting him down as far as the straight-up wins and loss column. And I know we've done this for a few different teams, but we're literally talking about 3 or 4 different field goal attempts from both teams that are affecting the Bengals being an 8-win team or an 11 or 12-win team.
Yeah.
So I think his MVP candidacy is just as strong as Josh Allen and Lamar Jackson. And I am a QB wins overtime guy, right? QB wins overtime gets you there, right? If Joe Burrow has this same season next year, the Bengals are going to win 13-plus games. I'm just telling you, that's what's going to happen, right? If you play this level of football, it evens out over time here. QB wins guy. But within a season, I mean, again, we're literally talking about missed field goals in overtime, missed against the Ravens, missed field goal against the Chargers. If you flip 3 non-Joe Burrow-related field goals, and let's throw the Kansas City pass interference in there. Let's just play this game just for the sake of it. You could flip 4 games in favor of the Bengals, right, and give them 12 wins, and they're sitting here at 12-4. If you flip 3 plays for Kansas City, including one against the Bengals, and 2 times the opposing team was in game-winning field goal range. They blocked one, and the other one, the Raiders did whatever the heck they did. The Chiefs are a 12-win team. They're sitting here at 12-4, right? So there is a fine margin, a fine line between Joe Burrow's Bengals having 12 wins and Patrick Mahomes' Chiefs having 12 wins. And I just highlighted 5, 6, 7 plays that are mostly outside of the control of those quarterbacks. But I get it at the end of the day. And I'm not trying to take anything away from Josh Allen, Lamar Jackson, their candidacy. I'm just saying Burrow is right up there with them, playing unbelievably, putting the team on his back. And he's also helped by having Jamar Chase and T. Higgins. Those guys are incredible. But offensive line inconsistency, backup right tackle in this game, Devin Cochran had to play. Defense has been awful in Cincinnati most of the time this year. Isn't his Joe Burrow's value inherently higher because he has to put the team on his back and can't make mistakes and has to put up 350, 400 yards in a lot of these games to go and win? I think it is. And he should be right in the mix with Lamar Jackson and Josh Allen in that discussion.
I mean, I think that the defense thing is the big point. Like, his defense this season has been atrocious. And, Baltimore's and Buffalo's have not necessarily been amazing over the course of the year, but they're both top half defenses. Cincinnati's is a bottom third defense, and that's the difference. Like, between those 3 guys and Burrow's stats, like, everyone's sort of statistically, it's quite hard to make an argument that Josh Allen is better than Lamar Jackson in terms of MVP. Allen sort of got the hype, the feel, the narrative, and Lamar's got the stats, right? Burrow sort of fits the middle. Like, he splits the two, really. Like, his stats are, in some ways, a lot better than Josh Allen's, and comparable to Lamar Jackson's, and in some ways, they're sort of slightly different. But anyway, his stats sort of split the two, and he's had the signature games, the MVP moments, et cetera, but the difference is his defense has been absolute garbage relative to the other two, and that's why they don't, kicker as well, but that's basically why he's not in the same position.
That's where the whole value discussion, to find value, it's like, well, if you're more valuable if your team wins, but if Josh Allen is not needed in the fourth quarter because the rest of his team is better, and Joe Burrow's needed to play all 4 quarters and put up 30-plus points a game, and they've lost 4 games with scoring 33-plus points this season, isn't he inherently more valuable in that case?
I'm now like
that's my point.
I have
define value, right?
Like I have an MVP vote. We're a week away from me needing to exercise it, and I have no earthly idea who I'm voting for MVP yet. What is fascinating to me now is, remember, like we've had co-MVPs before. That basically can't happen anymore because they've changed the system where it's like a ranked system.
That happened because of votes. It wasn't like the voters were like, I know. These 2 guys both earned it.
But my point is,
explain that to people, because I'm just saying, I'm interrupting you a lot today. I apologize. There are a lot of people out there being like, just give it to both.
Yes.
Let's do co-MVPs because it happened in 2003 with McNair and Peyton Manning. They literally had the same number of votes. That's why.
So there's 50 votes for MVP, and in previous years, it was if the same number of people voted for a guy to be MVP, and that was the highest number of votes, those guys shared MVP, right? Which didn't necessarily mean it was a 25-25 split. You know, if 2 guys voted for some random third rogue candidate, then it's, 24-24 split, right? But the point is, previous co-MVPs just means that the same number of the 50 voters tied, and so they just split the award. Now they've changed the system where it's like a ranked point system. So you vote Lamar, number 1, Joe Burrow, number 2, Josh Allen, number 3, Saquon Barkley, number 4, and there's points allocated for each position, first, second, third, fourth, et cetera. I think it's 5 choices. So it's almost impossible for them to tie now. I suppose technically it's still possible, but it's almost certainly not going to happen. But this is such a wide open field that I think it's going to be a fascinating, like when you see the results split out and how it's actually panned out, it's going to be close.
And because of that method, I think Mahomes will get some rogue votes, maybe not for 1, but for 2 or something, just because of the record. And that will throw some things off. And
there's a very real chance that whoever wins will have fewer first place votes than the guy in second or third, because
Saquon will get votes.
Ranked choices, right? So Saquon might be everybody's number 2 candidate. Everybody split on which quarterback is the most valuable, but everybody sort of feels, but Saquon, 2,000 yards, like maybe he gets Eric Dickerson's record. Let's give him number 2. Everybody might vote Saquon number 2, but he ends up with the most points and he wins MVP. Like, who the hell knows how this is going to break down?
As long as you don't do whatever Romo said yesterday and say, well, Lamar's got 2.
I've heard some extremely dumb arguments for the MVP. The other one, I actually think Ryan Clark is very good at what he does and a good analyst, but he had a very bad take on MVP, in my opinion, which is he said that the best argument for why you can't give it to anybody except Lamar Jackson is Jackson already has 2 and this is his best season. Ergo, he has to be MVP. No, because it's in each season is in isolation. If 5 guys are better than him this year, it doesn't matter that his previous years are worse than this.
Other people brought up last year, no offense to Lamar, it was one of the weakest MVP
That's
seasons
what I'm saying.
of all time.
Right.
It just happened that
the
other candidates weren't as strong.
This could be his best season by a country mile, but if 5 other guys were clearly better than him, he's not MVP. That's just a terrible logical argument.
Anyway, and look, I'm not even saying I would definitely take Joe Burrow over the other 2. All I'm saying is he's equivalent in this conversation, despite an 8-8 team. And Zach Taylor came out after the game and said, "Hey, he's the best player in the world."
Yeah.
John Harbaugh came out and said Lamar Jackson's going to be the best quarterback of all time before the season. Like, people
it's also, I think,
build up their QBs, but the Bengals are 8-8 despite Burrow's play.
That's the thing. But it's also a very different argument now, I think, that they're 8-8 and still theoretically alive than it was a few weeks ago where they were they were nowhere near this. Yeah. And it's like their season is going to end with 6 wins and it's just going to be a disappointment and they're going to be nowhere near the postseason. Joe Burrow, in large part, has dragged this team still to the fringes of the playoffs. So now, if they win their final game, whether or not they make the postseason, he finishes with a winning record And I think it's a much easier argument to make than if he'd finished with 6 wins and they never really got close, even if he'd still played at this level. You know what I mean?
The recency bias will be interesting, too, because on Saturday, Ravens play the first game.
Yeah.
Probably going to beat the Browns. We'll see what Lamar does. And that one,
Allen probably doesn't need to play.
Allen won't play on Sunday. Burrow's going to play right after Lamar on Sunday night with the playoffs potentially on the line if they win in Pittsburgh against a tough Steelers team. So good discussion. It was a great game. Bengals and Broncos, the last 3 teams still alive. Broncos, then the Dolphins, then the Bengals, in that order as far as controlling their playoff destiny.
Destiny.
A lot of people said destiny is not the right word, that we overuse it there, but we'll go with it.
Why is it not the right word?
Because it's predetermined or something and whatever. Can't control predetermined. We're not getting into that today.
No. Otherwise, this would go long.
All right, so let's talk Dolphins quickly. There are some games that we're not going to spend as much time on, just being honest. We're going to talk about the implications. Dolphins beat the Browns 20-3 in the 4 o'clock window here, going head-to-head with the big game, the Packers and Vikings. So Miami controls their playoff future if Denver loses, so they don't control much. But they got the win here. Snoop Huntley comes in. A couple big plays from him, and Dorian Thompson-Robinson continues to be one of the worst quarterbacks of all time statistically.
Yeah.
For the Browns. So Miami moves to 8-8. Again, they need Denver to lose, and then if they win next week against the Jets, they're in. When we previewed this game on Thursday, we didn't know that Tua had the hip condition and he missed the game. We didn't know that Tua was going to miss his game and that Anthony Richardson would miss his game. We'll talk about injury-prone quarterbacks over these next couple games here.
Yeah, I mean, it looked like for a moment everything was breaking Cincinnati's way. They effectively needed both Indianapolis and Miami to lose one of their 2 games in order for them to have any shot. And all of a sudden, it's like both those starting quarterbacks are not going to play. Now, the difference between Anthony Richardson and Joe Flacco is debatable anyway. As it happened, that broke their way because for some reason the Giants' offense put up one of the best performances of the season. Miami's, it's like, it might break their way, but Huntley and the offense did just enough. And largely aided by the fact that, as you said, Dorian Thompson-Robinson, this Browns offense.
What was the stat coming into the game? He's got one of the worst yards per attempt
I think
totals
he had 3.4
in
yards per attempt for his career coming into this game, which was statistically the worst quarterback to have ever played the game.
It's so tough to watch. He goes 24 for 47 for $170. That's 3.6.
So if I'm remembering the number correctly, 3.4, he got better in this game.
Improvement from DTR. Yeah, Huntley, he led the team in rushing with 52 yards and a touchdown. He went 22 of 26 for 225. Got Tyreek Hill involved, 9 catches for 105. A pretty nice game from Snoop, and that's why you sign a guy like him, right? He had a really nice little run with Baltimore in 2022, kept them competitive, not Lamar competitive, but they won some games with him, and good backup QB work from Tyler Huntley in this one, I'll say. So implications-wise, Browns are sitting there with 3 wins, as I said a little while ago. One of 4 teams with 3 wins, still technically in the mix for number 1 overall. But it is interesting. The Raiders and Giants, 2 teams that we thought were going to be in prime position to get their quarterbacks of the QB-needy teams, all of a sudden that's flipped over the last 2 weeks. It's now Tennessee and Cleveland at 2-3. And I'm putting Cleveland in the QB-needy bucket. They also this weekend made some news restructuring Deshaun Watson's contract, which I think just merely spreads the pain out a little bit.
Yeah, though the sort of analysis for that was that it basically guarantees that he's going to be there next year. Now, in what capacity?
He's already been guaranteed to be there for a while.
No, once they firmly sort of benched him and decided to go with
he got hurt.
Yeah, but once they sort of, it was, the analysis then was Deshaun Watson could be absolutely done, and it's time to figure out what the outs look like, right? This definitely changes that, where it's like he's there. Now the question is, in what capacity is he going to be there? Like,
maybe he's playing scout team safety again, like the 2021 Texans.
I do genuinely wonder, is there a scenario where he could just be a pain that they have to carry on the active roster, but he's not there? Like, you see this in soccer sometimes, right, where you're stuck with a guy. Gareth Bale for Real Madrid, who just decided, no, I'm not leaving. I'm not going to take a transfer somewhere else. I quite like the giant sum of money you're paying me on a weekly basis, and as long as I fulfill my contractual obligations, you can't get rid of me. So I'm just going to continue to earn a paycheck and never play for you, right? And there are some, teams will effectively sometimes try and force a guy out or simply determine that this is an unacceptable state of play, and they make them like train by themselves and are completely divorced from the main team. Like you don't show up to games, you're never playing, you're not going to train with us. We owe you this money, but you have to like train by yourself in a building with the children or whatever, right? I do wonder if there's a scenario where the Browns be like, we are stuck with you, we owe you this money, we have to carry you on the roster for this to work, but you're not here. You don't come with the team, you don't train in the building, you're not in meetings, you are simply a pain that we have to carry on this active roster, but it's best for everybody if you're never here. It would be unprecedented, I think, but
that would be interesting.
Like if
I don't know if the Players Association would let that happen.
I don't know. I don't know what the
also,
deal is there.
The NFL's Players Association's weaker than say MLB's. They're not the best negotiators.
I also wonder
compared to others.
Does he care? Like this is the thing. It's only an NFLPA issue if he's like, no, this is unacceptable. I want my rights as a player. But if he's like cashing the check, maybe Deshaun Watson's all right with that as a concept.
Well, now look, this wasn't the case a couple weeks ago. Cleveland's probably going to lose to Baltimore this weekend. Baltimore, this game matters to them because they don't know what Pittsburgh's going to do. Baltimore wins and they win the division. They get the number 3 seed. That's the alternative is having the 5 seed and going to Houston. It would be the 5 seed. So they want to win. Cleveland's probably going to end up 3-14 and in no worse than picking third.
Yeah.
With the team ahead of them right now, one of the 2 teams ahead of them not needing a quarterback. So they're going to have a Cam Ward, Dur Sanders type of decision, or at least opportunity at the top of the draft to sit him with Deshaun Watson still under contract.
Well, it's also one of the few ways they can get out of the Watson. I mean, the Watson being there. Like, if they've moved on at quarterback, they have limited options in terms of what they can do because Watson's contract is still there. A rookie deal quarterback is one of the few ways out of that in terms of pain, where you can still theoretically get a viable, high-level starter, but not cripple yourself from a cap standpoint because you've got so much money tied up in Watson already. Actually, it would be a giant boon for them to sort of fall into one of the 2 starting quarterbacks potentially at the top of this draft.
Other things to note in this game. Myles Garrett, how many official sacks did he have?
2, I think.
2. Becomes the first player in NFL history to have 14 sacks in 4 straight seasons. Very specific stat, but Garrett's the only guy to do that. And then again, shout out to the Dolphins for getting the win with Snoop Hundley as the backup. But Tua's hip injury showed up late in the week. That was an issue coming out of Bama. Remember, he was this slight injury-prone quarterback.
He had a devastating hip injury in college, right? Like his hip got blasted out through the back of the pelvis or whatever happened to him. It was a freakish monster injury.
So that's just something to keep an eye on, right? I mean, Tua he's been injury-prone, but more from a concussion standpoint, right? So the injuries have been concussions, not hip-related. That was an issue coming out of Bama, had an ankle, had other things coming out of Bama. And anytime you have a slight in stature quarterback and you have injuries, it's like, oh, this guy's injury prone. Well, the next guy we're going to talk about is big and huge and strong and also injury prone. But just a fascinating turn of events that Miami needed to win, Colts needed to win, and both lost their starting quarterbacks somewhat late in the week, right? They both finished last week's games, showed up on the injury report. Tua really late, just became doubtful on Saturday. Anthony Richardson, it was kind of day-to-day, like, oh, he's not practicing. Oh, it's Joe Flacco time for the Colts. Anything else on Dolphins before we get to this?
No, I mean, Miami's defense played pretty well, obviously, in part. Like, look at the production, the Browns' offense. Miami's defense played pretty well. Calais Campbell's the ageless, timeless old veteran on the defensive line. Like, they deserve to win this game. Miami's offense, okay, it looked better. Like, this is certainly the best performance Tyler Huntley has had at quarterback for them. However, like, a lot of that was just the Browns' offense couldn't do anything. So that were you privy to any of the Calais Campbell discourse and how Miami said if they were out of the playoff picture, they would release him and let him
chase a ring and sign somewhere else.
Ah.
But because Miami is
Technically still alive.
they're still alive, so it won't be this week. But if Miami loses next week, or if they're eliminated from the playoffs, I assume they can
They'll
still do
release
that.
him after the season.
Yeah, and I think he could still get picked up. So they were kind of doing him a solid. I mean, he's almost our age, Sam. Doing him a solid and letting him go to a playoff team to make a run. I'd be interested to see who that is. Is that Kansas City? Is that Buffalo? Is that Baltimore?
I mean, he would literally, if you're adding
he's
him,
played in Baltimore.
if you're adding him as simply a rotational piece, he would literally upgrade every single playoff team there is. Like anybody, literally everybody.
So that's just something to keep an eye on. If Miami gets eliminated next week, I don't think there's no playoff roster restrictions, right? Like he can get released at the end of the year, or are they stuck? Is he out of luck?
I don't know what the rule is there.
Anyway, that's just something else to keep an eye on. Let's get to this Giants and Colts game here. The Giants get the win. The team picking number 1 overall going into the day yesterday. Giants get the win over the Colts, 45-33, eliminating the Colts from playoff contention. And before we get into the nuts and bolts of this one, I want to ask everybody to subscribe. I want to get into the subscription thing. We've been posting the easy click the button subscription deal here because only 33% of our viewers actually subscribe. We want to get that up to 100%. So become part of the 100% that are subscribed. Click the button to subscribe to Check the Mic. Appreciate everybody that already is subscribed and all those who will continue to join the fun. We're closing in on 30,000, and we just started this thing in August, so we appreciate everybody giving us all the support. So 45-33, the lowest scoring team in the NFL. The Giants score 45 points, including a kickoff return for a touchdown. I want to talk, where do you want to start, Colts or Giants? Because there are massive implications here.
I mean, let's start with the draft spot stuff.
Okay.
Because this was this is up there. The Raiders have 2 candidates. This is the other candidate for the single most damaging win a team has had in the NFL this season. The Giants, who were on track for the number 1 overall pick, are currently picking number 4 and can't jump any of the other 3 win teams if they finish with the same record. So regardless of what happens in the final week of the season, the only way the Giants can improve from 4 is if New England, Tennessee, or Cleveland win. They can't jump them if they tie based off other, strength of schedule, tiebreaker stuff. They have effectively locked themselves into, at best, number 4 unless one of those other teams wins.
And look, this year...
to remind people, what is theoretically viewed as a 2-quarterback class.
Yeah, and it might be weaker, like, I don't know, Shedeur Sanders and Cam Ward. I think there's probably less confidence in that 1-2 punch than there is last year's group.
But it's also...
And now looking at last year's group, it may have actually been 6
right.
deep in the first 12, which is what it was. So...
But it also doesn't... I mean, the strength of those relative 2 isn't really the point. The point is those are the 2.
Those are the 2.
Like, that's what's available. So if you need a quarterback, those are your options.
And it's all because Drew Lock goes 17 of 23 for 309 yards and 4 touchdowns, including a rush and then a 5th touchdown on the ground. Malik Neighbors basically saying, I don't care about my quarterback next year. I don't care about the draft pick. I'm going 7 catches for $171 and 2 scores. It wasn't the best throw-for-throw game from Drew Lock. This wasn't all him. There was a lot of yards after the catch, and
right.
Malik Neighbors just balling out.
Well, this is another example why EPA sucks as an individual stat. I forget where I saw it, but this is like the 5th best EPA per play game on record.
Yeah,
like
it's right up there with some of the games where if you said like 07 Brady against the Dolphins,
right.
where he started like 12 for 12 for 250 and 4 touchdowns. It's like up in that territory because EPA, especially in a small sample size, team-driven stat and yak-driven stat and everything. But that's how dominant this was. And that's why when we do talk about the Colts, how disastrous. I mean, this is historically disastrous for the Colts, who probably weren't going to make the playoffs anyway.
Right.
But just an awful, awful defensive performance. So, like, credit Drew Lock, credit Malik Neighbors. But, man, just tackling was awful. Coverage was awful. Everything from Indy's defensive point of view, other than their run defense, was atrocious.
The first touchdown for Neighbors, right? Like I saw some people like, oh, look, Dayball knows that he's on the out, so he's like calling the game of his life because he doesn't care about the draft pick. It's like Dayball called the wide receiver screen on like 3rd and 14, like a give-up play, right? Who cares? We're just going to get 5 back and maybe improve. He get 3rd and 14, whatever it was, wide receiver screen, and Neighbors just takes it to the house.
31-yard touchdown.
Right. It's like that's not a good play calling. It's nothing. It's just you gave the ball to your best playmaker and he decided to go nuts. And I mean, I saw Hayden Winks of Underdog was tweeting, good news. All of your rookies had great games, right? Like Malik Neighbors does that. Tyrone Tracy has a great run, has a pretty good performance. Drew Phillips got his first interception, I think, late in this game, had an important play for them. So good news, all your rookies are great. Bad news is they're your best players, and that's not a good place to be from a roster standpoint.
Yeah, no real depth, but the lowest scoring team in the NFL puts up 45.
Yeah.
So the Giants' draft implications, as you said, potentially missing out on a quarterback, or like we said last week with the Raiders, this game cost you future draft capital, right? This cost you a trade up. This cost you something. I had some, I keep rushing to the offseason. I want to save some of this for the offseason, but had some people suggesting J.J. McCarthy, is he available in a trade? Is Sam Darnold so good you can't let him out of the building right now?
Right.
If you're in Minnesota, in part because it's a known commodity. You've seen him play for Kevin O'Connell. You've seen him play with that group. How do you go to J.J. McCarthy? Or do you say, man, we've done this with Kirk Cousins. We've done this with Sam Darnold. Let Darnold walk. Does Darnold go back to the Giants? And as my friend Eggs from North Reading, his name's Eggs.
Eggs?
Yeah, that's his name. Giants fan, listener of the show. Yeah, right the wrong that was picking Saquon Barkley at number 2 in 2018, letting Sam Darnold go to the Jets at number 3. Does Darnold go to New York? Going to lead to some fascinating offseason discussions here. But it's more of a discussion now because the Giants are sitting at 4 in the draft order rather than 1 because of this offensive performance yesterday.
Yeah, I mean, this was so damaging from the problem with the Eagle strategy that we keep referencing as the thing that somebody needs to be trying to do is pull your starters intentionally, quote unquote, lose a game so that you maintain draft position late in the season. You need institutional job security to be able to do that. Who's going to make that call for either the Raiders or the Giants in the last few weeks of this season, right? Theoretically, it should be Joe Schoen, right? But Joe Schoen can't go 5 minutes without firing up social media and seeing angry John Mara, with his head in his hands from Hard Knocks because every decision he made this last offseason has almost been thrown back in his face by fate mocking him, right? He can't do that. He can't be there's no way that Joe Schoen has the job security right now to be like, hey, John, just a heads up. We're going to intentionally lose the last couple of games so we get this number 1 overall pick, and then we'll get our guy, No way. So everybody involved in the game is trying to win, and unfortunately we have a team like the Colts who decide that they're capable of losing a game like this. That means you're going to hang 40 on them and take yourself out of those draft positions. So from Shane's point of view, from Dayball's point of view, presumably, doesn't matter for them. They're probably going to get fired anyway. The new guy is coming in going, God damn it, if they just blown the, it's like the Lovie Smith thing. If he just lost the game you were supposed to lose, I'd have my quarterback right now. Instead, I got to go trade for this guy.
You'd have Bryce Young instead of C.J. Stroud, and you'd be in a much better position if you're the Houston Texans.
It's all Lovie Smith's fault.
Talk about that later. So Giants out of the number 1 pick. That's the biggest story for them. From a Colts perspective, this is bad.
You see McAfee's dissertation?
Yeah. So the history of the Colts in winning in games. And look, they come into the game 7-8, 3 teams ahead of them, and two teams ahead of them in the pecking order for getting into the playoffs. They need almost as much stuff to happen as the Bengals need to get into the playoffs.
It's win and stay alive, not win and in.
Right. It was win and stay alive. But very much like the 2021 Carson Wentz season when they're playing the number 1 overall pick selecting Jacksonville Jaguars. Win and you're in Jacksonville, and they lay an egg. Similar performance. The Colts defense has not been this bad.
No.
This season.
It's been fine.
This was absolutely terrible. And then you add to this, Anthony Richardson doesn't play. And so, look, you get that high-end Flacco game, right? He's going to chuck it down the field. He has a beautiful tight window touchdown pass, a 49-yarder to Alec Pierce. Michael Pittman has 109 yards. Pierce has a $122. Jonathan Taylor with a couple long runs, 2 touchdowns in there. So it's a high-end Colts offensive performance. This is better than, output-wise, what Richardson's put out there the last few weeks. But he gets hurt again. That is another massive story. He's just coming off the first time he's played, 5 games in a row over a 2-year period. This is now how many injuries does he have? 5, 6 in a 2-year period? injury-prone Anthony Richardson, and the defense has an historically bad performance, particularly in coverage.
Yeah, I mean, institutionally, this has been a pretty bad season from the Colts because you come out of it, and do they have any idea what they have in Anthony Richardson at this point, right? Probably not. I mean, he is wildly inconsistent. He's capable of high-end plays. He's a very good runner. He, however, has been quite injury-prone, has been wildly inconsistent, has a sort of prohibitive baseline of accuracy and efficiency, and you don't know if you can rely on him for more than 5 games at a stretch. And there wasn't necessarily a discernible difference between him and the geriatric Joe Flacco, who, comes in, also is wildly inconsistent, but in a very different way, right? Flacco's either going to throw for 300 and 2-3 touchdowns or be disastrous, and you'd be like, why? We were idiots for thinking this was not a downgrade. So this is, and then, you got the defense that just collapses in a must-win game, and you're like, what is this team? Like, this is not a good outcome for this season, independent of the fact that they missed the postseason.
I'm trying to find here it is. Ian Rappaport. We bring awareness to the shouty shows. I want to bring awareness to our listeners on the insiders around the NFL. More awareness when they tweet, when they put messages out there. Just listen to where the messages are coming from, right? Just listen. I don't want to. We're in the industry here, Sam. I don't want to piss anybody off, but let's just say, just awareness. Rap Sheet puts out there yesterday before the games, with all that has gone on during an up and down season for the Colts. This is before they give up 45 to the Giants. There is this. They'll finish the season knowing Anthony Richardson is their QB for the 2020-25 season, and they hope beyond. My story, right? So they know for sure. Are you serious? I mean, I see Colts fans talking about this. How could you be sure that the guy who just has theoretical upside had put together a nice little 3-game stretch and then had laid an egg, and then last week, I was watching him last week being like, he's taking a lot of hits. And he finished the game, and then he shows up at the injury report, doesn't practice, and he's out again. I've said this for years. Injury proneness is not about size and physicality. It's generally about how you play the game. And for whatever reason, a guy like Josh Allen can handle that better. Right? I don't think you could just say, well, Josh Allen's the same size as Cam Newton, is the same size as Anthony Richardson, therefore they're all going to handle impact the same. Josh Allen has stayed pretty healthy. And honestly, when he's gotten hurt, it's like, oh, he might have blown out his elbow. No, he's fine. He comes back.
So that's the thing.
Newton, really quick, Newton had a lot of lingering injuries, and eventually by year 8, 9, 10, all of the battering ram style that he played, I think caught up to him. Richardson, it started from almost immediately. He's playing this battering ram style, doesn't know how to protect himself, and he's been injured 6 times in 2 years. That is a massive issue for the Colts, in addition to the awful defensive performance.
So I do think that there are people that are simply more injury prone than other people. I don't know why that is the case, but I think the same hit on 2 completely different people can have 2 very different results. Completely different, not affected by how big they are, right? Like, obviously, theoretically, a smaller guy taking the same hit is going to be more vulnerable to the impact of that hit. But, I think Josh Allen and Anthony Richardson appear to be different levels of durability, even in comparable play styles, right? Like, Allen does not protect himself particularly well for a quarterback. I think generally you're right? The biggest needle mover on whether a quarterback is going to get hurt or not is not what you call for them, what hits you expose them to. It's how well they protect themselves from those hits. Josh Allen does not protect himself from hits, basically at all, and if not particularly well. And yet he has been extremely durable. Now, the other thing is, okay, when you take a hit and you get hurt, quote unquote, as differentiated from injured, quote unquote, how do you deal with that? Josh Allen, I think, will play through being hurt and even being injured. He's out there, he's got a broken hand or whatever. He's still playing. Now, Richardson, this is the problem. One of the problems with checking yourself out of a game because you're kind of tired. All of a sudden, everything's going to get questioned, right? And Shane Steichen didn't help matters because he doesn't like talking about injuries, so he just said Anthony Richardson was sore, which he later had to clarify it was back spasms. He couldn't go. Like, this was not, But the problem is now everything you're going to be questioning, I mean, how hurt is he? Could he really not go? Or is he just decided he's too sore to play in this game? Like, if Josh Allen had what Anthony Richardson had right now, would he have played in the game? Is the question people are going to be asking. And I don't know that we know the answer to that. So,
and then you compare that to, okay, Patrick Mahomes has what's often, and maybe his facial expressions make it look worse than it is, but he's got these 3 to 4 week ankle injuries where he shows up in a week. Trevor Lawrence played through 4 different injuries last year at the same time. Justin Herbert played through 4 different injuries at the same time this year. Tom Brady made a Super Bowl run on a torn MCL or whatever it was. You have this history of, like, those dudes are tough, man. There's a lot of tough quarterbacks in the NFL to get through this, and I'm not going to question that with Richardson, but the injuries are certainly adding up, and it is fair to ask, are these chronic things? Is it a pain tolerance thing? Again, I don't know, but
it's not.
Those are fair questions. If you're the Colts, how can you rely on Anthony Richardson going forward given the way the first 2 years have started?
Yeah, in a way it's unfair to him because certainly from the outside, like, nobody knows the medical ins and outs of what he's dealing with, and so you can't really judge. But the bottom line is it doesn't really matter. Like, either your pain tolerance right now or your sort of willingness to fight through hurt and injuries is not high enough, and you need to become Josh Allen from a toughness standpoint, right? Or you're too injury prone for you to be the guy anyway, right? Either way, it's a problem. It's just we don't quite know which one it is right now. Are you simply too injured to be, like, are you the next Jimmy Garoppolo? Where, remember, when the 49ers decided to trade the farm for Trey Lance, you could justify that entirely based simply on Jimmy Garoppolo's injury history. Forget, is he good enough? Simply, you can't rely on him being there every game anymore. So we need to look somewhere else. Like, is Anthony Richardson going to be the next Jimmy G, where he's simply too injury prone to be a reliable quarterback? Or is the problem, actually you just need to suck it up and play when you're hurt, not injured? Again, I don't know what the answer to that is, but the Colts have to be asking that right now, and only one of those is potentially movable, right? Like, if it isn't that he's just not being tough enough right now, and it's that he's too injury prone, well, that's a problem that we need to address with a new quarterback. And if it is that he isn't being tough enough and needs to just man up and get out there, I mean, maybe we can fix that, but that's a problem we probably shouldn't have to be dealing with, which is kind of where, like, that's kind of at the root of some of the Pat McAfee stuff.
In addition to when he's out there, it's very inconsistent and volatile. And so, really quick, big picture, Chris Ballard's been there since 2017. Andrew Luck retired on him, had to have a Jacoby Brissett season, and then they went revolving door of Carson Wentz and Matt Ryan. Phillip Rivers, Carson Wentz, Matt Ryan. Then they drafted Anthony Richardson. So we're on essentially the fourth choice of quarterback, the fourth QB decision, essentially, that Chris Ballard has made. And I think Colts fans, including Pat McAfee, season ticket holder, may be
not for long
losing patience. Former season ticket holder, Pat McAfee.
Current season ticket holder not renewing.
Not renewing.
Quote in brackets.
Anyway, we spent a lot of time on that, but I think it was worth it. We'll spend less time on these next two. I just want to talk draft implications here. Jacksonville Jaguars get the win over the Tennessee Titans. Titans currently now move up to the number 2 pick. Jags fall to the number 5 pick here. It was 20-13, 4-12 Jags, and the 3-13 Titans. There were some plays that happened in this game that led to the Jags winning.
Very true. Amongst them, Brian Thomas Jr. being amazing.
Yeah, he's still really good. Parker Washington had a beautiful touchdown that they let stand. I think Gene Steratore said, haven't seen one like that. It was like a heel-toe thing, but it wasn't a toe tap, so it counted. And anyway, it was a sweet catch, so I'm glad they counted it.
You know the way there's a lot of games like this one where everyone is kind of like, yeah, there's a football game on, it's nice, but like whatever. That felt like the officials treating it like that way. It's like, whatever. It's Jacksonville, Tennessee. Who cares? Let it stand. You know? Is it close? Sure. If this was a game that mattered, would we spend more time about it and maybe overturn this? Yeah, whatever. But now just go with whatever you called. It's good enough.
I was a little triggered by the Jags-Titans in heavy rain. I was having some flashbacks to the 99 Week 3 game where Brunell lost. My Jags lost to the Titans. The biggest thing here, Brian Thomas Jr., they're also featuring him more end-arounds and tap passes and everything.
Yeah.
They've talked about it the last couple weeks. He had 10 total targets. But they talked about putting more on his plate. And from a team-building perspective, we thought maybe he could be a good, effective deep threat as a complementary piece, a high-end or a Gabe Davis type. I don't want to diminish our diminishing of Brian Thomas Jr.'s skill set where we were wrong. He does look like a legit number one, as you've highlighted on the show and admitted mistakes in the past.
Yeah.
We both admitted this. And it's a nice piece for Trevor Lawrence and the Jags to build around going forward. So they moved down to 5 in the draft position. Titans now sitting at 3. And as I said before, at 2. And as you've said, with New England facing Buffalo backups next week, we could be looking at the Titans moving into the number 1 overall pick here.
Yeah, they've gone the opposite way of the Giants and the Raiders, where they could legitimately bank into the number 1 overall pick. And, I mean, that would be huge for Tennessee. They're one of the teams that does want or need a quarterback because they've given up on Will Levis. Rudolph is not the answer long term. So if they stumbled into their choice of the quarterbacks in this draft class, and the choice is significant as well, because as you say, it's not seen as a particularly strong duo, right? Regardless of how many of them there are, which is itself relevant. There's only 2 relative to 5 or 6 last year. The fact that the 2 are not slam dunks, neither one of Cam Ward or Shadur Sanders is seen as can't miss, generational, number 1, like sure thing. So you want your choice, right? You might not like 2 of them. You might only like 1 of them. You want the number 1 option, not the number 2 option. So Tennessee stumbling ass backwards into the number 1 overall pick over the last few weeks could be a huge development for them.
Let me just lump this in with the next game, and then don't worry, Janko, I'll get to the read after this. Let's just lump this in with Raiders and Saints. Can we do that?
Okay.
Because I want to get these 2 games out of the way before we get to the other good games. So the Raiders were the number 1 picking team just 2 weeks ago.
Yeah.
They win 25-10 over the Saints. They moved to 4-12. Saints fall to 5-11. The Raiders, as of right now, are picking 8th. And so what this has done in a potential 2 QB race that you keep highlighting, we were talking about, like, where does Aaron Rodgers land next year? Is it Tennessee? Because they're on the outside looking in. Well, Tennessee and Cleveland are the top 2 QB-needy teams that have a pick now. And we're talking about the Giants and now the Raiders as the next, and the Jets, the next QB-needy teams, on the outside looking in here and asking Aaron Rodgers questions and asking Sam Darnold trade questions and J.J. McCarthy trade. This is what we're talking about here. The Raiders have completely changed their offseason outlook by winning the last couple of weeks here.
Yeah, I mean, that's been the most damaging thing. Like, they've gone from the team that was sitting there number 1 and would have their choice.
They had 1 or 2.
They were 1 at one stage, I think.
But they were in the 1-2 mix there.
Had they lost out, I believe they would have been the number 1 overall pick. I think that's the situation they were in. Anyway, they've gone from that dynamic of at least having a guarantee of either Cam Ward or Shadur Sanders at the top of the draft to now they pick currently number 8. And, I mean, that's a problematic distance from those picks. Like, forget a week ago, they'd slipped to 4 or whatever it was. You're like, okay, you've just cost yourself draft capital to get back to that spot to get the quarterback that should have been rightly yours had you just lost the games. Now you're in the Carolina range where they gave up so much to trade up to get Bryce Young that it crippled them, right? Like, okay, now it looks like Bryce Young might be working out for them and it's okay. But last year, we were like, it cost them DJ Moore. It cost them all this stuff. So the team around Bryce Young is so bad that it has no shot of working out.
Yeah.
That's now where the Raiders are, where if they want to get their guy, they're going to have to give up that kind of trade to go up and get him, at which point there might be nothing around him to function. Or you go, damn it, we missed out on everybody. Hey, Aaron, you fancy one last go-around? Maybe we could get Devontae Adams back.
Bring Devontae back. Oh man, it's such a tough position. Aiden O'Connell sometimes plays good football games. You're not going to roll with him, I don't think, going forward. Pretty nice game from O'Connell. got the run game going a little bit. The Raiders, Brock Bowers got the tight end receiving record, did it in 16 games too, which gives me a little check mark. I know Ditka did it in 14 or whatever, but I'll give Bowers the record.
The Ditka record is fascinating just because it's one of those ones that stood for so long. To me, though, the more interesting record that he broke yesterday was he broke Puka Nakua's rookie receptions record, which obviously only last year.
Puka did it in 17, yeah.
And a wide receiver record. I mean, he set all-time rookie receptions records. Like, again, everyone's going to focus on Jaden Daniels, Rookie of the Year, and absolutely has a strong case. Let's not overlook what Brock Bowers has done and is doing on a bad Raiders team with very few other options.
Yeah, he's outstanding. I mean, they have. It would be great to see what else they could get at receiver to complement Bowers and Jacoby Myers there, but obviously they need to solve quarterback first. For the Saints, they're hurt, depleted, have no depth. Spencer Rattler is kind of reckless with the football, and it was a rough game for them.
And the Saints, by the way, are another team that probably needs a quarterback. I mean, they're
5-11 because they started 2-0.
Yeah,
they're picking 10th.
Yes,
it is a wild season where there's 10 teams with 5 or fewer wins this year.
Right.
And we thought it felt even across the league this year. That did not show up in records. It shows up in close games. I think it's a record number of close games. It's not showing up in records. Teams that are losing close games are doing it at a high rate.
Yeah, so, I mean, the Raiders damaged themselves by winning those games and taking themselves to number 8. The Saints are at number 10 and probably have an equal need at quarterback, assuming they're planning on moving on from Derek Carr. I mean, Rattler, you're not going to go into next season saying Rattler's the guy, right? It was an interesting look at him this season, but he's a backup at this point, so where's their quarterback coming from as well?
So all those teams above, are they going to be the next team that looks at Derek Carr? The Jets, remember the Jets, every time they need a quarterback is Derek Carr. He's kind of available. Oh, man, we got a lot to talk about this offseason, but I just wanted to touch on this quickly because there's draft implications. Raiders no longer controlling their QB situation. They're going to have to get creative. Saints might have to get creative. Titans and Browns both far more in control as far as the QB needy teams go. Browns interesting spot too if they're going to roll with Watson and then push it a year. The trade down component that they might have as well. So anything else on this one? I want to shout out Jackson Powers-Johnson. Had a nice game up front for the Raiders. They're running the ball better in recent weeks, and JPJ looking good as a rookie. So the first 2 picks for the Raiders, Bowers and JPJ, both looking pretty good as part of that rebuild.
I mean, they've done some good things in the last couple of years. It's just they've been trapped in this position of not picking high enough in the draft to get a quarterback, and they've missed out for a couple of years straight now and have potentially just done it to themselves again by winning these games.
Anything else on these last 2, Jacksonville, Tennessee, and Raiders, Saints?
No, I think we can speed on by those.
All right, let's tell you about our friends over at Harry's. The holiday special's over, but Harry's still has a great deal for all of you to try their products. We love Harry's. We got shipped some Harry's. Love the razor. Love the 5 blades. Love the shave and the shave gel. I like all of it. And it's German-engineered blades that are made in their own factory that stay sharp longer. They have customizable delivery options for scheduled refills as low as $2. That's half what you pay for other big brands. You get the 5-blade razor, weighted handle, foaming shave gel, and a travel cover for just $3. And it's over at harrys.com/checkthemic. So get the edge on your shave with Harry's. Get started with a $13 trial set for just $3. It's over at harrys.com/checkthemic. That's harrys.com/checkthemic for a $3 trial set. All right, it wasn't a great game, but had some impact here. New York Jets, Buffalo Bills. Bills get the win and the number 2 overall seed. What was the final? 40-14. They were up 40-0 at one point until the great Tyrod Taylor comes in. Aaron Rodgers with an historically bad game per ESPN's QBR. Josh Allen puts a bow on his MVP candidacy, his last pass. Really nice touchdown on a throwback across his body to Keon Coleman. And Bills take care of business, locked in with the number 2 seed at 13-3. And so they don't have to play their starters next week.
Yeah, huge game for them. And a bounce-back game. The last couple of weeks, they hadn't looked great. And it's been like, do we worry about Buffalo the way they're playing at the moment going into the postseason? I mean, this was a pretty emphatic game. first half took a little while to get going, and then once the ball started rolling, it just absolutely snowballed out of control. I did like the stat that I sent you that 4 quarterbacks played in this game, and Rodgers was the only one not to put points on the board. That's
well, he did just -2 points on the board for the other team. He got sacked for a safety.
Yeah, I mean, it's not quite the same.
Mitchell Trubisky goes 1 for 1 for 69 yards and a touchdown.
QB controversy. Yeah, that's Allen's MVP candidacy undermined right there.
Yeah.
System quarterback.
Look at Trubisky coming in.
69 yards per attempt.
Rodgers had a game, man. He finishes the game with 2 interceptions.
Yeah.
A safety.
Uh-huh.
He had a late hit penalty.
Yep.
And he set, kind of, per Pro Football Reference, who tracks sacks back to 1982, he set the record for most time sacked
most sacked quarterback ever.
On like 140 fewer games than Tom Brady, to surpass Brady. I did have multiple people point out to me that if you go back further, Fran Tarkenton actually has the record. Rodgers is just a couple behind him, so there's still time to get the record officially.
I thought I saw him. Just Fran's career.
So Fran's before 82, right? So
yeah, all of his career though, right?
Yeah.
I saw a stat where he was ahead of Tarkenton.
No, still behind him. Is that just a chair?
Yes.
Just a chair. I'm just making sure there's not like a tornado coming through here or anything.
No, I don't believe there is.
That's just really loud chairs upstairs.
Yeah.
Anyway, just another more futility stats for the Jets.
I mean, this was like a cartoon game for Rodgers where it was like the whole thing almost seemed designed to mock him. Like, did you see the video where the Jets were coming out to Gangsta's Paradise with a boom box? It was like the 49ers thing where so you come out, to Gangsta's Paradise in a boom box and then get waxed by 40 points to the Bills, and you have one of the worst games of your career, and it's just a joke. I mean, it's just a farce. Like, the Jets this year have been awful, and this was a new low.
All right, I know you love the halftime coach interviews. I happen to be on, my volume happened to be on Jeff Olberg's halftime. And it's what do you have to do? And it's like,
got to play better. We got to physical.
No, he said, we have to get back to playing our brand of football. And to which I ask, what is your brand of football as a 4-11 football team?
Yeah.
What is your brand? Because I would change the brand. I would change it.
Rebrand.
And the Jets will this offseason. Full brand change, powered by 33rd Team in the coaching and GM search.
Mm-hmm.
So a lot of things are going to change. I feel like from an on-field playing standpoint, we've defended Rodgers far more than most. I do think there's other issues there, but man, hasn't played well the last couple weeks.
No.
And the Bills take care of business. They get the number 2 seed, and the implications there, the assumed round 2 matchup is Bills-Ravens. That will be in Buffalo rather than in Baltimore. That's pretty significant, and we're looking at a potentially unbelievable game between the 2 favorites for MVP in Josh Allen and Lamar Jackson.
Right, which won't affect that because the votes will already be
It will not affect that at all. I'm just saying that'd be a fun round 2 game there.
No, absolutely. It's a significant seed to wrap up because, if we assume that there's a fairly clear tier in the AFC, Chiefs obviously with the 1 seed, but then Buffalo, Ravens, before you get to Houston, who are stumbling their way into the postseason, the Steelers, who we saw on Christmas, appear to be a clear step behind, and the Chargers, who have had games where they look that way as well. If that's the playoff picture, and then Denver obviously trying to wrap up that final seed, like if that's our AFC playoff picture, you want to be like you're kind of strategizing for the next round. I mean, okay, you can't overlook any of those other teams in the wild card round, but Buffalo and Baltimore don't want to go on the road to the other one. So it is a significant seed to lock up for the Bills.
It also, again, allows the Bills to rest their guys, their starters next week heading into their wild card game. And Buffalo's going to play whoever wins this number 7 seed battle between the Denver Broncos, Miami Dolphins, and the Cincinnati Bengals. And then Tyrod Taylor came in, goes 11-14 against backups, 2 touchdowns, and looks great.
Mm-hmm. Further adding to the mockery of the Rodgers thing. I mean, okay, backups, garbage time, but it's still, it still just sort of adds salt to the wound.
Let me just add this. ESPN's QBR, which, again, heavily negates sacks, negative yards, heavily elevates, rushing yards, what have you. Aaron Rodgers' QBR was 1.2. And per Robbie Byrne on X, 9,697 games in their database, Rodgers would rank 9,677. So in the bottom 20 out of 9,697.
Yeah, it's pretty bad.
I don't think it was that bad, but you take a sack in the end zone, miscommunication at left tackle, not good. So the Jets offense scores -2 points in this game against Buffalo.
Yeah. Again, same idea that like the Jets offense was inept, therefore the defense for Buffalo is going to look pretty good. But impressive performances. Christian Benford had an interception, also had another one where he was pretty close on it. Gregory Rousseau made some good plays. Like Buffalo's defense had a very good game, which was
Von Miller had a rush in there. Like if all those defensive linemen coming together, Ed Oliver's been rushing the passer really well in recent weeks. If all those guys come together against Baltimore and potentially Kansas City, those are huge.
I feel like it's, I don't know if it's fragile or volatile, Buffalo's defense, but it's definitely capable of having these games where it shows up big and makes key plays. It could be a differentiator in the playoffs, not necessarily relative to Kansas City, Baltimore, et cetera, but like they're able to have those games. Now they're also able to have games like against the Rams where they give up 44 points. But how Buffalo's defense plays in the postseason is going to be interesting to watch.
Anything else on this one?
Will McDonald for the Jets had a good game. He's had a pretty good season. Like certainly relative to maybe not expectations because they kind of needed to lean on him coming into this year given what they'd done at edge rusher, but he was good relative to what I guess people thought he would do coming into this year or what he did as a rookie. Maybe not as good as the sack stats were early in the year, but generally this has been a very good and encouraging year 2 from him.
One other thing that I wrote in my notes, the Jets, remember last week they scored 9 points against the Rams and didn't punt because they kept getting stopped on 4th down. Well, that continued in this game. They went 6 straight quarters where they scored 9 points and didn't punt. That's impressive.
And not in a good way.
I'm just saying, there's just like a lot of crazy stats for the Jets generally. Oh, and then the one last thing, the Tony just when we talk about it, we're just trying to elevate the MVP discourse.
Oh God.
Because Tony Romo essentially came on the side of, Lamar's got his 2. I think Josh needs his 1 this year, roughly. And he also kept saying, "Oh, Josh is set up. He's got the Bills have the ball at the 1. He's got the QB sneak. This is going to help the MVP candidacy." Like, please, people, elevate the MVP discourse that a couple QB sneaks at the 1 are not going to influence you either way. Because people just put up the stats, total touchdowns and yards, like who's MVP? It's like, there's context here. I'm not taking away from Josh Allen. I'm just saying, like, if he has 7 QB sneaks from the 1 as touchdowns where he gets pushed in, that shouldn't be the difference in him versus Lamar.
I feel like if you're looking to Tony Romo to elevate the discourse of anything, you're looking in the wrong place.
2-minute drills. It was very good.
He spent about 5 to 7 minutes of real time yesterday marveling at teams' records.
I can't believe there's
disparity.
So many 3-win teams and 4-win teams.
There's a lot of teams that have got really good records in the NFL this year. This is wild. Like, the game is set up for parity. And look, you got Kansas City over here with just a 1 loss. And even if they lose in the final week of the season because they're resting backups, that's still only 2 losses. And that's, only 1 more than now, but like way less than a lot of other teams that have much more losses. He spent 5 to 7 minutes banging on about this like it was some sort of miracle unfolding in front of his eyes. And you're like, what the?
And now you are.
What is this? This was the guy that everyone was like, he's the greatest analyst of all time because he's calling plays before they happen. And now he's just sitting there like an old drunk guy at a bar rambling about how teams have only got 1 or 2 losses. And it's amazing to watch happen.
I triggered you with the Romo talk. Eagles.
You're over here being like, can't that man just elevate the MVP discourse? No, he can't.
I'm asking everyone else to do it. I'm asking everyone else. Eagles 41, Cowboys 7. Eagles lock up the number 2 seed, going 13-3 here. Cowboys fall to 7-9. We didn't know if Jalen Hurts was definitely going to play when we recorded on Thursday. He's still in concussion protocol. Kenny Pickett, who had a rib issue, comes in, gets the start, plays well, hurts the ribs again.
Broken ribs, apparently.
Broken ribs for Kenny Pickett.
Now, were they broken going in or just after the hit?
I don't know. I mean, they were sore enough that he almost didn't play initially.
Right.
Micah Parsons hits him, breaks him, further breaks him, whatever it might be. But the great Tanner McKee comes in, 3 for 4, 54 yards and 2 touchdowns.
Justice from Mike Renner.
Yes, we should have get Rudy back on the show here to brag about Tanner McKee's performance. And then Saquon Barkley goes 167 rushing yards on 31 carries, over 2,000 yards. He does it within the 16-game window, so kudos to Saquon Barkley. The offensive line, everybody's thrilled, and he's getting closer to Eric Dickerson if they choose to pursue that next week against
the Giants. That's interesting. That's a decision to make.
Just saying, if the Giants had Saquon yesterday, maybe they score 60 points against the Colts.
Maybe. That's a legitimately interesting decision. Like, he is within sight of that Eric Dickerson record, which has stood for a long time, obviously. Would break it against the Giants. On the other hand, Philadelphia doesn't have anything to play for, so why would you risk him?
Yeah. And all I ask on the record thing, on counting stat, I just ask that you acknowledge if it was 16 or 17 games.
Particularly if you do believe that he's MVP or like one of the most important players on the team, he should not go anywhere near that game, regardless of the record. Like, that's crazy talk.
31 carries yesterday in a game that was kind of out of hand early on. I mean, they got up 24-7 at the half. 31 carries.
Yeah.
You have to play. I mean, it's a different NFL than it was 5 years ago as far as the 2 seeds used to get buys. You have to play the wild card round. I don't think Saquon's going to play next week. You have to rest him.
I saw people running the math on the games thing with Ditka's record, because Ditka did it in 14 games. Yeah. So they're like, well, yeah, he broke it within 16 games, but Ditka set the record in a 14-game schedule. And if you do it on a per-game basis, Brock Purdy needs X to beat Ditka's record. Yeah. Or, sorry, Brock Bowers needs X yards between now and the end of the season to overhaul Ditka.
Pre-1978 NFL, I don't care.
See, this is a double standard.
Yeah, it is.
You only care about 16 games.
I care about the almost my lifetime, whole different NFL.
Right.
If the West Coast offense was in the NFL, I care about it. So anything starting in the 80s, essentially. So the 78 16-game schedule change, that's an okay era. Anything before that, it's like a weather game.
Doesn't count. Throw it out.
A whole different game.
Okay. I mean, this was overall really impressive by the Eagles. Obviously, their defense did a really good job, interceptions, but their offense fired without Jalen Hurts. And in the passing game, like Kenny Pickett, he got hurt and left the game, and they didn't put him back in there because Tanner McKee also did pretty well. But Kenny Pickett fired a couple of really nice deep passes, which is not a particular strength of Kenny Pickett's game. Usually he's been captain check down, Mr. Underneath, absent of the big plays, low average at the target. His average at the target was like 10 yards downfield, hit a couple of dimes, also had that weird glitch play where he somersaulted instead of throwing a ball. But whatever, that probably didn't help the ribs either. But that was an impressive Kenny Pickett performance. Okay, Saquon had 30-plus carries, so they were obviously, leaning on him to carry the ball. But the reason they put up 40-plus points, or in part, is because they also had a deep passing threat that hasn't always been there this year.
Yeah, A.J. Brown is QB-proof, man. Devontae Smith behind the defense twice, wide open behind your guy, Andrew Booth, who's really struggling.
My guy.
I'm just kidding. Struggling at corner for the Cowboys. Yeah, I thought Pickett did some nice things. Also goes 2 for 3 on tush pushes.
Yes.
So I was hoping to get
myth busting in front of our eyes. The tush push.
2 for 3 is not good.
It's not?
No. I mean, the tush push, you're talking.
It's pretty good.
I think it's myth enhancing because the tush push is a 90% success rate.
Oh, so it goes from 90 to 66?
His knee went down on
because he can't squat 600 pounds?
Yeah. But, again, Kenny Pickett, by the way, remember the element that he brought to the Steelers offense that Big Ben did not was the QB sneak. If Kenny Pickett did anything, he was a great QB sneaker before he had people pushing his tush. So he had that help yesterday for a touchdown, but he also had the knee down on one of them. So he goes 2 for 3. Okay. Jalen Hurts is a 90% guy. Pickett's now a 67% guy.
Had he been able to squat 600-plus pounds, he would have been able to keep his own body weight up.
I need the squat numbers for Pickett. Again, showing that we should not just be staring at rushing touchdown numbers for Jalen Hurts or for anyone else and determining MVP candidacy off of that. The Eagles, they're capable of this, man. This is why I'm so high on the Eagles, because in any given week, Saquon can, hit the 50-yarder any given time. Love it. But Devontae Smith can. A.J. Brown can. Grant Calcaterra can have a one-handed 34-yard reception as he did yesterday. There's just so much high-end potential for this offense, even without Jalen Hurts.
Yeah, I mean, it's a pretty complete team. As long as everybody stays healthy, which is always, the question going into the postseason or late in the year, they don't have a particularly glaring weakness or flaw. Now, obviously, you need Jalen Hurts healthy, but the offensive line is dominant. Saquon Barkley is dominant in the run game. The passing game can fire when they have those guys out there. The defense, it's deep. It's, they've got strength at all three levels. I mean, it's a complete football team. There's a reason they were in. They're not still in the number one. They can't get the 1 seed yet.
No, they can't get the 1. They're locked in as the 2, and there's all the scenarios are out there for who they could play at 7. They could play the Packers.
Yeah.
At 7, which is wild, given their season and what they were just playing for yesterday in their game. So Eagles take care of business. The other side of the coin, it all started with a pick 6. C.J. Gardner-Johnson with a 68-yard pick 6. Is that right? 69-yard. Cowboys had been playing hard, maybe finishing strong, and maybe saving Mike McCarthy's job, and a lot of the scenarios that we pointed out, funny scenarios, where if they beat the Eagles and they beat the Commanders the last couple of weeks, kind of throw those out now. They're 7-9, and we'll see what happens this offseason with Dallas.
Still fighting, though, literally.
And there was a lot of fights, and Dom got some camera time. Talked about on the Instant Reaction show last night. It's good to see Dom getting back out there on the camera.
Did you see the kid that filmed the fight from, this distance? So
no,
the fight, spilled into a tunnel on the stadium, right?
Why are the Eagles always fighting people? They're fighting the Steelers. Now they're fighting the Eagles.
And Chauncey Gardner-Johnson wasn't involved in this one, I don't think. Usually he's the instigator. No, he's the guy that starts the fight. Or
maybe it was the whole game of instigating that
at least antagonizes somebody to the point where there's a fight. I don't believe he was involved in this one, or at least not immediately as the starter. It was Sidney Brown that was at least starting the Rumble. But there was some guy. So the 2 things that I found quite funny about the fight. Number 1, I've never seen anybody so terrified of imminent violence as the cop that was standing right there. It was like, ooh, get me out of this. It was amazing. The guy stood there with a flak jacket and presumably a weapon of some kind is leaping his way out of the fray and then trying to shuffle his way along the fence to get away from this. I found that quite funny. And then there's a video where, the way you can flip the camera on your phone from selfie to what's in front of you. So it starts off, it's like a kid's face, then he hits the button, and it's the fight happening right in front of him.
I didn't break down
6 feet away.
I didn't break down the fight film.
Yeah, it was pretty
Frankly,
funny.
I saw the fight on my 6-box, 6 games at a time, and I went to the football instead of the fight. I didn't watch the fight.
Always got to analyze the fight. There's always funny things to be seen.
I'm glad you did for us here. Check the mic.
So this guy had a ringside seat to the thing that was unfolding right in front of him.
Check it out. You got to break down the film on Monday. I'll let you know after I see the film what I think of it. Anything else on this one?
No. I mean, Philadelphia, very impressive. They're still as formidable, I think, as any team in the NFC. Dallas, bad game, bad result. Are still technically fighting hard for Mike McCarthy's job.
Still fighting for Mike McCarthy. All right, three more big-time games to get to.
Big time.
But first, got to tell you about our friends over at GameTime and GameTime Picks. They filter out the fluff to show you only the incredible deals on great seats, so you don't have to waste time searching through thousands of tickets. This is how I get my tickets. If I'm looking for a game, concerts, comedy, theater, it doesn't matter. The curation makes it easier for you to save more when you're looking for tickets. The all-in pricing toggle is beautiful. You just press a button. This feature shows the total up front with no surprise fees at checkout. And then you get the seat view in the app. You get a panoramic view of your seat in the app before you buy it. And GameTime also has a lowest price guarantee, or they will credit you 110% of the difference. Your purchase is also covered by the most flexible customer service policy in the ticketing industry. So take the guesswork out of buying concert tickets or any other tickets with GameTime. So download the GameTime app, create an account, use code CheckTheMic for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account, redeem the code CheckTheMic, CheckTheMic for $20 off your first purchase. Download GameTime today. What time is it? Game time. All right, let's go Tampa Bay Bucks with a monstrous win over the Carolina Panthers, 48-14. Bucks go to 9-7, and Panthers fall to 4-12. Because the Commanders beat the Falcons last night, the Bucks are now in the driver's seat as far as the NFC South goes. Win and you're in next week against Spencer Rattler's Saints. you and I were questioning the validity of the 9.5-point spread as of Thursday going into the game.
Yeah.
Both taking Carolina, who had been so feisty and playing all these close games, not realizing no Chuba Hubbard, no J.C. Horn, not realizing a depleted Panthers team was showing up. They still fought hard early on, but, man, the Tampa Bay offense just dominated. And credit Tampa Bay, but, boy, this was a pretty bad defensive performance by Carolina as well.
Yeah, it turns out the thing that we forgot largely is just how bad Carolina's defense can be and is and has been for most of this year. Some of the players that were playing significant snaps for this defense, former first-round busts at cornerback Caleb Farley, who got abused by Mike Evans for a touchdown grab in the end zone, Chandler Wooten at linebacker, Xavier Woods had a bad game at safety, Jacoby Windman, DJ Wanham, Shai Tuttle out there still valiantly trying to get himself a pressure. Just not a good group of talent. And Tampa Bay's offense has been really good. It's deep. It can pass the ball. It can run the ball. Baker Mayfield, when he hits that groove, is a really good quarterback. And early, it looked like this might be a shootout or a back and forth. Tampa Bay's defense made some plays. Carolina's didn't. And that's how you go from close shootout to utter beatdown.
The thing we may have mentioned, or maybe I mentioned on Thursday, with the season on the line, you can get the Baker Mayfield's going to ball out and Mike Evans is just going to be unstoppable. That's, happened to a point here. Evans, 2 touchdowns in the tight red zone, 8 catches for 97 yards, and Baker's numbers just ridiculous. 27 of 32 for 359, 5 touchdowns. Again, some of them are just walk-in easy touchdowns, blown coverages, and it was bad from a Panthers perspective, but Baker was on. Bucky Irving was outstanding, 113 yards on the ground, 77 through the air. We did also theorize Rachaad White's fumble at the end of the game on Sunday night against Dallas was going to lead to, okay, this is Bucky Irving's backfield now, and the timeshare stuff is going to be much more in Bucky Irving's favor. That was the case. That dude is a big play waiting to happen. Every time he touches the ball, continues to prove it. And that's honestly one of the biggest factors, as the Bucs are going to sit here potentially most likely hosting a playoff game against a good number 5 seed here, against either the Vikings or the Lions. The Bucky Irving factor to this offense gives them a legit chance to upset. It'll be at home, but upset a team like Minnesota or Detroit in that first round.
Yeah, absolutely. They're dangerous. I mean, this is another team that's capable of extremely high-end play on both sides of the ball, though certainly more on offense than defense. And Baker, as that streaky quarterback, I mean, when he hits those highs, he's really, really good. And he definitely does seem to, the more that's on the line, the better you seem to get from Baker Mayfield recently. I just wanted to give a shout out, as much as I generally dragged the entire Panthers defense, there was certainly a couple of play sequence. And the reason I remember this is because one of them was on Bucky Irving, where they got the ball out to Bucky Irving in the flat, one-on-one. And you're like, immediate missed tackle, positive play. Like, there's no way. Damani Richardson, the rookie, I think, safety for Carolina, on back-to-back plays. The first one was against Bucky Irving in the flat, where he made a one-on-one tackle really impressively. The second one, the same thing on the other side. I forget who got the ball that time, but he made back-to-back one-on-one tackles in the open field in a way that you do not see defensive backs do very often anymore. Like, the standard of tackling in the NFL generally has been atrocious, and yet Richardson is out there making back-to-back plays on defense. On the rare occasion when plays were made for Carolina.
Part of the rebuild? Rebuild?
Based off those 2 plays, yes.
So Tampa Bay drove down pretty quickly. They score on the first drive, and then Bryce Young comes back with big-time throws down the field. I mean, he hit Adam Thielen with some absolute dimes again yesterday. We spent a ton of time talking about Bryce Young, but I would say this is another tick box in this blowout. He played well, got sacked a few times, had to deal with, he's dealing with just a lesser supporting cast, but he made some huge throws again in this one.
Yeah, it's a little unfortunate for him that, like, Adam Thielen still looks like his best wide receiver at the moment. The upgrades that they made to that side of the ball are not paying immediate dividends yet.
But yeah, I thought, they hung tough early on, and then Tampa Bay's offense, they were unstoppable, man. They can get hot offensively. They're, I think, 4th in the league in scoring right now this year. So, they took care of business, and because of the Falcons-Commanders game that we'll talk about in a minute here, it's just Spencer Rattler's Saints sitting between the Bucs and the division. I think the Saints beat the Bucs in Tampa Bay last year. Saints played one of their better games to almost screw the Bucs out of their playoff hopes. I don't see that happening the way the Saints are playing right now. So the Bucs, I didn't see the early line on it, but it's probably double digits going into this game, and that's what Tampa Bay is looking at to try to get their 10th win and their 3rd straight division title.
Mm-hmm.
Anything else on this one?
No, other than, that the result of this game versus our analysis of it going in, that's why casinos in Vegas are significantly better appointed than my house is.
I didn't know how depleted Carolina was going to be. And Thursday injury reports are difficult to decipher. But Chuba Hubbard's out for the year. He's been a nice complementary piece to Bryce Young. I mean, they couldn't get anything going on the ground yesterday. Not having J.C. Horn in the secondary. I mean, Mike Evans owned Caleb Farley. Multiple routes, didn't have a chance. So that affected things quite a bit.
Yeah. I mean, I still think it was the Carolina defense just...
I know you care more. You're like 5th in our picks game here.
Yeah. Need those wins. Need them.
Harry's up to at least 17th now.
You said that. I believe that's misinformation based off my analysis of the.
Or maybe it's for the week.
Yeah,
Did I misread?
That makes more sense.
Oh, that week 17 rank. Okay. What's his overall? Oh, he's tied for 62nd. Good for Harry, though. That's good. Way better than I am.
I mean, it's certainly better than you, but it's not.
Oh, yeah. They put it, so he's 11th in week 17, but 62nd overall.
Yeah.
Yeah, I did lie to you.
Uh-huh. It's all right. I assumed that was the case and moved on.
Anyway, enough of this game?
Yeah.
We only have 2 left. This is incredible. We have a lot to talk about in these last 2, though. A lot to talk about. It's going to take 45 minutes. Let's do it. So, Sunday Night Football. We're going to jump to this one because of the NFC South implications. Washington Commanders get the win 30-24 in overtime. Commanders move to 11-5, clinch the playoff spot. Atlanta falls to 8-8 and no longer controlling their future in the NFC South here. So they need the Bucs to lose next week and would have to beat the Carolina Panthers to sneak in as NFC South champions. Incredible back-and-forth game. I loved this game, Sam. Again, even without – I mean, they ended up being a decent number of points in this game, but it wasn't like this offensive showcase. Falcons were up 17-7 at the half. Commanders dominated the second half. Falcons came back to tie it at the very end at 24. Commanders win the toss in overtime. They go down, get the game-ending touchdown to win 30-24. And another day, just Michael Penix had his ups and downs. I was impressed by just the cool and calm in clutch situations. But Jaden Daniels, wow, just a crisp game. And he just points in this game where he took over, finishes with 127 yards on 16 carries. His ability to run and creative run game from Washington, I think, was the massive difference in this game.
Passed RG3 for the most rushing yards by a quarterback, or rookie quarterback in NFL history.
Yeah. In the second straight week, Jaden Daniels led a 10-point comeback. First rookie quarterback to do that since Andrew Luck in 2012.
And it's actually funny how much, like, the stuff they're running is some very RG3 stuff. Like, and now it's just not seen as a gimmick or, a way of kind of taking advantage of a strange skill set. It's just like, this is how you treat quarterbacks now. Like, if you have a guy that can do that, absolutely, this is what the offense should look like. Why would you do anything else? That's crazy. Whereas RG3, it's like this was seen as some sort of prop to keep him upright and make him function as a quarterback, to the point where RG3 didn't even want to do it going forward. It's like, I want to be a real quarterback. I don't like this gimmick option stuff. It's just funny how the game changes in a decade and a half.
Yeah, it has. I mean, there's some unique design stuff, the ways that they got into QB counter and various things and then just the scrambling from Jaden Daniels. A repeat a million times. He's got a great feel for when to take off, and the Commanders, when they needed to, they relied on him. That's why he had 16 carries. Some of them designed, some of them on scrambles. Made some huge throws. Game winner to Zach Ertz in there. Was a nice throw away from coverage. Daniels just showed up again in this one. Outstanding.
That throw to Zach Ertz, so great throw, but also amazing catch. And that catch apparently earned Zach Ertz $250,000.
Oh, really?
He got a bonus because
that's why he scooped his hands under it, didn't let it hit the ground.
That was his 6th touchdown of the season, I think, which triggered a $250,000 bonus. That was an amazing catch. Like, I could not believe that he managed to keep his hands under that the whole way. I was like, how did he keep control of that the whole distance? And they showed the replay, and it wasn't close. Like, he legitimately in his hands the whole way, never came close to adjusting or having a, double catch it or whatever. Just a clean, perfect catch, and one that was worth $250,000 to him. So kudos to Zach.
Just to go through the game flow here, Washington scored almost immediately, go up 7-0. Daniels comes back, throws a pick. I thought the broadcast, Chris, did a really nice job highlighting some of the sim pressures that the Falcons were dialing up and dropping Caden Ellis into coverage. Daniels misreads it, throws it to Ellis for an interception. Falcons were creating some pressure early on, and so that got them back into the game. And Michael Penix Jr., I thought the most impressive thing for me, I thought we were both impressed with his week one, or his first start against the Giants for the actual throws that he made. For me, it was the number of times he bounced back. He missed some throws. He missed some open receivers. I thought coming out he was kind of a flat ball type of guy. I questioned his touch. I think you see that on some of the throws where he should be putting more air on the ball, and he's just on a line zipping it. But the number of times that Penix came back from misses, including the game-tying 4th and goal from the 13. Let me talk about that in a second. But Atlanta was up, man. They were up 17-7, and then Washington absolutely leaned on them in the second half. If you look at the second half possessions, Commanders come out and they go 15 plays, 69 yards. Atlanta goes 3 and out, -1 yard, and then Washington comes back again, 14 plays, 70 yards. They just dominated the game flow in the second half, and it was a lot of, 5 yards here, 6 yards there, Daniels running, hard-nosed running. I think Chris Rodriguez should be getting more carries. He only had 16 yards, but that dude is tough to tackle, had a touchdown in there. Washington's run game, and then Zacchaeus with 8 catches. Just a ball control, really nice effort from Washington's offense in the second half.
Yeah, we'll get to this with the other game, Minnesota-Green Bay as well. But it's funny how quickly what look like significant, leads can just evaporate. It only takes it takes 2 drives, one for you, one for them, and suddenly everything is different. That drive coming out of the half, this was a wild, it's the sort of swings of momentum in this game, where it's Washington right away. It's wow, they've come to play in this game. Atlanta is clinging on. And then you get Atlanta's defense suddenly starts to show up, and they're suffocating Washington. They're getting turnovers. They're putting points. They're running the ball at will. They assume this giant lead. And then coming out of halftime, you're if Washington doesn't get something going, they're in real trouble. And they chew up half the third quarter with that big drive that you talked about, put points on the board, then get the 3 and out, and suddenly it's a totally different game. Now Washington's in the ascendancy, executing this comeback. Atlanta's not able to keep things going, and it becomes this back and forth late in the game. But it felt for a while like Washington was clinging on to this game, and if they hadn't got that drive coming out of halftime, they would have lost this game. But it's funny how quickly it can change like that.
Yeah, I'm not usually a body blows type of guy, but I feel like Washington absolutely wore down Atlanta's defense. A creative run game was impressive. Brian Robinson running hard, Chris Rodriguez running hard, and then, just mixing in short passing game around that. I thought it was really effective by Washington. Atlanta, we've said all year they just don't have the pass rush. And look, they got after Daniels a few times, but you see how creative they have to be, right? It was a sim-pressured trickeration game. I think when you look at Atlanta's defense, look at what Minnesota did this year. Last year was you always called it smoke and mirrors, right? The Brian Flores defense. This year you have that, plus you have dudes who can win one-on-one. It does feel like that's what Atlanta is really missing, is just more guys that can win one-on-one up front in games like this. Also, Atlanta's offense, Bijan Robinson, another classic game with him. I mean, just the prettiest 5 to 15-yard runs. He has 5.3 yards per carry with a log of 13, again, including 2 touchdowns. They were running the ball really effectively early on, but as soon as they went 3 and out in the second half and Washington had the ball the entire third quarter, Atlanta kind of came out of their offensive rhythm, which was try to run the ball and create, big plays off play action. I thought Penix was big play hunting a lot. Like he was holding the ball for a while on a bunch of plays, like really trying to take shots down the field. And, that part was inconsistent. Took some negative plays in there in the second half.
Yeah, he did. I mean, he certainly wasn't flawless in the game. Made some mistakes, but I mean, did have the bounce back plays. Like almost every mistake he made, he then rectified a play or two later, and right at the death. Like for them to actually execute that touchdown when it looked like they'd screwed it up with the botched snap. Like they get down there into the shadow of into the red zone. They run this like wildcat play with Bijan Robinson as the quarterback guy, and the snap's over his head, or he's not able to corral it as a high snap, and they lose like 1,000,000 yards. You're like, well, that's the game. All right, done.
Yeah, let's discuss that. So it's 24-17 Washington. So they're up late in the game. Falcons are driving. Falcons had to convert a 4th and 11, which, by the way, just feed Drake London. That dude is good. He gets wide open on these deep outs over and over again. That's the conversion on 4th and 11. They get down into the tight red zone, and then that play that you said, 1st and goal from the 5. 2:19 left in the game, just before the 2-minute warning. Direct snap over Bijan Robinson's head. It looked like a pretty creative play. It looked like one that Zach was feeling good about, right? We're dialing this up at the 5 here on 1st and goal from the 5. Goes over his head, and that puts Atlanta at 2nd and goal from the 26 coming out of the 2-minute warning. Does feel like the game's over. They get some 13 yards back. It's 3rd and 13. There's an incompletion. That was one of the throws I thought Penix missed, right? Had Drake London in the end zone, misses a 3rd and 13, overthrows him. So they're faced with 4th and goal from the 13, and Penix puts the ball down and away to Kyle Pitts for the game-tying touchdown. It was just like Bo Nix hitting Marvin Mims. Just so impressed with some of the rookies coming back with those throws in crunch time.
Yeah, so I mean, amazing throws he made after that screw up. Missed, like had a chance to get one, didn't get it, but 2 out of the 3 he had absolute dimes on.
And then the next sequence. I want to get into the next sequence. What
that was such an interesting play, and they were talking about it in the broadcast because once ball's over his head, Bijan scrambles back, picks it up. He's lost a ton of yardage, and he's trying to get out of the mess. He could have potentially thrown it, and they were like, and he picks it up and spins that way to his right. Bijan's left-handed, so he actually span towards the side that he
Tirico highlighted.
Yeah, that he would have used if he was going to be able to throw it away. Instead, chooses to try and outrun the first defensive lineman that's tracking him down. And a massive credit to Jalen Holmes, who's the guy that actually grabs hold of his ankles. Even when you watch the replay, the All-22 look at it, once they start moving, you would bank on Bijan outrunning Jalen Holmes and actually being able to get away, certainly from the first guy. And if he'd done that, he might have been able to rescue the play a little bit.
Would there have been an illegal man downfield? Almost certainly on a run play like that. Because it probably would have been a 10-yard. Is that a 10-yard penalty?
I don't know.
It still would have saved you about 15 yards.
Yeah.
Or 10. It would have saved you about 10 yards if you could throw it away. The tricky part there is trying to get the ball back to the line of scrimmage. You have to throw the ball about 15 yards to the line of scrimmage just to potentially save the sack.
Really impressive play by Holmes to get hold of him, because had he broken that guy, he had like 5-10 more yards that he would have gotten back.
So then we get into some more of the game management stuff, right? So Atlanta ties it up 24-24. You mentioned momentum swings, and Washington controlled the entire second half. Atlanta ties it up with under a minute left, with a minute something left, minute 20 or so. Washington gets the ball with a $1:19. They go 3 and out. Sack, incomplete, maybe a pass interference miss in there. There are also some awful phantom holding calls in this that I think, again, the broadcast highlighted pretty well, and it's like phantom holding calls where it becomes 1st and 20. Those are potentially just disastrous. So Atlanta gets the ball back with about 40 seconds left after a punt. So they've got 2 timeouts, 40 seconds to go from the Atlanta 19. First pass, Michael Penix hits Darnell Mooney for 25 yards along the sideline. Now, you're hoping he's going to go out of bounds. If you're Atlanta, he doesn't. But you have 2 timeouts. And they didn't use the first timeout, because once you're at the 40, you're at the Atlanta 44, right? Now your kicker, you don't have Younghoe Koo. Your kicker's range is 38? It's mid-90s here. So you probably need 20 to 25 yards. But two timeouts in your pocket. You use one, you could throw a seam pass, whatever. You're a couple passes away from getting into range here. They don't use one of the two timeouts. I think after the game, Raheem Morris said he was hoping the operation would be a little bit faster. But like they get the snap off at 17 seconds. I don't know what else you could ask for.
What else? You've got two timeouts. Like
you have to use one.
Yeah.
Once you realize he's going out of, it looked like he was going to go out of bounds.
Yeah.
And Washington kept him in, which was good on their part.
Well, also he catches the ball right at the sideline and sort of could have theoretically spanned towards the outside and gone out of bounds effectively, or at least
spun.
Whatever, gone out of bounds in the process of being tackled. Instead, he just sort of braced for the hit that he knew was coming, which is understandable. Like that's an entirely natural reaction, but you would have liked to have seen him at least try and spin to the outside and get out of bounds, as opposed to simply bracing for the contact. But the point being, like at that stage, if you don't use one of your timeouts, you can't use them both. You know what I mean? Like not using a timeout effectively reduces the amount of time so much that you're not going to have the time to use both timeouts. At which point, why not use one of the timeouts?
It's just again like a preparation thing. I don't know, but you have to be ready. And I know it happens quickly on the sideline. You're watching Mooney. There's probably something in you that's saying get out of bounds, get out of bounds. You have to be ready though. As soon as he doesn't go out of bounds, and as soon as you realize that, you call timeout. That saves them probably up to 15 seconds, maybe, of time. And then you're sitting there, you've got 3 shots to hit a seam pass, to hit one of those Drake London deep outs that was open over and over again during these 2-minute situations. And essentially, instead of what happens is Atlanta goes incomplete. But then 3rd and 10, there's a neutral zone infraction. They have the ball at the 49. They throw the ball down the field to Mooney, and there's a 13-yard defensive pass interference. And do you have that on all 22? I thought that should have been a defensive hold.
It should have been.
So it was definitely a hold, and I know somebody said the ref called it a hold and then converted it to a pass interference, which is like the right protocol, right? Because if you hold, it could start out as a hold, but if you keep holding and the ball's in the air, you can call it a defensive pass interference. But I put 2 and 2 together. Penix held the ball forever in the pocket. Saw the replay. The hold happened pretty quickly. It probably should have been a 5-yard penalty instead of 13. But that gave the Falcons a 56-yard field goal attempt, which did not come close.
Yeah, no, you're right. Like it was funny because they were setting up for this 56-yard field goal, and you're like, in today's NFL, that's fairly attainable. Like most kickers, I mean, people are taking shots from 70, right?
Yeah.
Like you expect a 56-yard if it's straight. Like if it's down the middle, you are expecting now a 56-yard field goal to have the distance, and this one wasn't even close. Like it must have been 5 yards short. It's just
whoever highlighted the camera was like, the camera does like that, like, oh, we're up at the goalpost, it's gonna go, and then it just drops it in the middle of the end zone.
There was this one. There was another one recently as well, where it's like it felt like a kick from the late '90s, where these guys were like struggling to hit 49 yards for distance.
Yeah,
like it's just refreshing now.
This one's over 50. His range is usually high 40s.
In this world where we're all hoping Dallas gives Brandon Aubrey a shot from 71 to find a kicker that can't even get to 56. It can't even get close to 56.
There's 32 kickers in the world where their range is 58 plus, and everyone else is like 51.
Yeah,
at best. So that field goal falls short. Commanders get the ball in overtime, and just impressive drive down the field again. Jaden Daniels with a 7-yard scramble. There's a 7-yard design run in there. Another scramble for 16. Gets the ball to Chris Rodriguez, who I will continue to repeat is difficult to tackle. Get hit to him for 12 yards, and then Daniels hits Zach Ertz eventually for the 2-yard game winner. Just game flow-wise, there was a lot of interesting things there, and we go back to the timeout management and various things by Raheem Morris. I think that was a mistake. Would have given Atlanta probably a better shot. But, man, can't say enough good things about Jaden Daniels once again and what he was able to do down the stretch here.
Yeah, I mean, he was extremely impressive. And again, it's the rushing threat that's so big. Like for in a couple of games when they've needed him to make plays, he's taken like the 4th and 11 against the Eagles, where he just slalomed through the defense rushing. Like that's so huge. That threat is so difficult to stop.
Even the first touchdown. That was the other thing I wanted to highlight. The first touchdown, they go for it on 4th and 2, and old boss Chris was like, "Hey, this is where they go for these because Jaden Daniels on the edge, his running ability, and he rolls out, and Chris is like, see? And then he draws the defender and throws it behind him for a touchdown. I mean, the run threat is valuable. I'll also say for the hashtag take the points crowd, Washington's all 3 touchdowns, the first 3 touchdowns for Washington all came after 4th down conversions. The first 2 when they were very much in field goal range and passed up chip shotty type of field goals to go for it. And that's why Washington won, was those aggressive 4th down decisions where they converted. And Daniels is a huge part of those conversions, right? That dual threat ability does give them a weapon. They are incredible on 4th down. I think Ben Solak had some of the stats. I always reference the 2019 Ravens, where they were at the forefront of going for it on 4th down a lot and also had this like 80% success rate. Washington's in that range. Now that comes back to the mean at times, but when you do have the mobile quarterback, it does help quite a bit. So Washington winning this game in part because of their aggressiveness on 4th down that kept leading to touchdowns.
Yeah, no, you have to factor that into to any analysis about whether you go for those 4th downs or not.
So Washington's in the playoffs. They could have a 6 or a 7 seed here. If they're at 6, they're going to the Rams. A 7, they're going to Tampa Bay or Atlanta, probably Tampa Bay. I'm sorry, I'm making that up. They're either going to the Rams as a 6 seed or Philadelphia as a 7 seed. Those are the options for Washington right now.
Yeah, it's some like the NFC, I think in particular, has got some really exciting potential playoff matchups in that first round.
I'll also say this style of play from the Commanders. I know they've put up a lot of points this year, but that ball control, 5 to 10 yards at a time type of offense, that can be scary for a team like Philadelphia. They just beat Philly last week, but that can be scary to start to slow the game down if they play like that. So Washington's going to be a tough out, I think.
Mm-hmm.
All right, man. Is that it on this? What do I have next? Anything else on this game?
No.
All right, before we get to Packers-Vikings, got to tell you about our friends over at PrizePicks, the best place to get real money sports action. With over 10 million members and billions of dollars in awarded winnings, PrizePicks has made daily fantasy sports accessible to all. You just pick more or less on at least 2 players for a shot to win up to 100 times your cash. So download the PrizePicks app now. Use code CheckTheMic. You get $50 instantly when you play $5. We've been playing this entire season. I just missed my lineup by 1 player this week, but all sorts of great things when playing PrizePicks, including the flex play, which means you can still cash out if your lineup isn't perfect. You can double your money even if one of your picks doesn't hit. PrizePicks is also the only real money daily fantasy platform with an injury insurance policy, so your lineup stay in play even if one of your players gets injured. If your player leaves in the first half and doesn't return, PrizePicks keeps your lineup live, and PrizePicks puts its members first, so all withdrawals are fast, safe, and secure. When my picks hit, I get to get my money in as quickly as 15 minutes. So download the app today. Use code CheckTheMic to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. That's code CheckTheMic. Get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. PrizePicks, run your game. That's every game, huh?
Minnesota, Green Bay.
Obviously, I know. Leading up to this. Minnesota 27, Packers 25. Vikings move to 14-2. Packers fall to 11-5 and potentially the 7 seed. They could be as low as a 7. Vikings 14-2, looking at a showdown with the Detroit Lions. Sunday Night Football next week. Winner gets to take a week off. Winner gets the bye in the NFC. The most regular season wins in a matchup in NFL history. 14-win Vikings.
Well, that's also a 17-game schedule stat. That doesn't count. We've got an extra game involved for everybody.
Mostly in timing. So what are the Lions? They 13-2 at the moment. Yeah,
13-2 versus 14-2.
14-2 Vikings. Another impressive Sam Darnold game. Vikings, they got up early, man. They it wasn't dominant early on by Minnesota. It was back and forth, both teams. Minnesota gets up 13-3 at the half. I want to talk about that in a minute. But they were up 20-3 at one point. Packers creep back into it and end up losing by 2 in the end.
Yeah, I mean, it wasn't absolutely dominant by Minnesota early, but they were the better team and put points on the board and could have put up more. I mean, Keyshawn Nixon saves a touchdown on that sort of underthrown Darnold deep shot to Jordan Addison, I think it was, where Addison maybe could have come down with it anyway. Darnold should have put it out there earlier
Addison had
or
a couple
further.
steps on him.
Yeah, like it was it needed a lot to not be a touchdown, was the point. The forced fumble on Josh Jacobs early, like Green Bay did this thing, which they tend to do. It's kind of interesting, actually, in this world of, analytics and taking the edges, et cetera. The Packers take the ball a lot when they win the toss, which is usually one of those just sort of standard, the numbers just say you're better deferring, right? You're better off doing that almost, period.
I don't even know if the numbers say it. I just always want my extra possession in the second half.
Pretty sure the numbers say that as one of those just sort of decided declarative, this is just a thing you should do. Whereas the Packers and LaFleur like taking the ball, establishing, no, we're going to march down there, we're going to put up points, and suddenly you're behind the game script, you're in trouble. Instead, this time, they started moving the ball, and then Minnesota forced a fumble on Josh Jacobs and turned it over almost immediately. So now you're like, your statement, to begin the game just backfired completely, and you gave up a possession and lost the ball in the process.
Thanks to Jerry Tillery.
Yes. So then Minnesota's, putting points up. They're looking good. They're looking like they're sort of easing away with this. I guess the rot started with a Darnold mistake, like a forced play that ends up as an interception, a pretty decent return by Ballantyne, which they dodged a bullet on. Remember, he fumbles that at the end, and Carl Brooks falls on it and keeps the ball. They score a touchdown a couple plays later, and suddenly we're kind of 10-point game again. But then Minnesota answers the next drive, gets their touchdown back. But the same thing, the Vikings have done this a lot this season. They're up 17 points with 7 minutes left in the game. That's basically done. And again, it became a razor-thin game. The Vikings have let these late leads slip multiple times this year.
Vikings fans think you hate the Vikings. Do you want to?
I don't hate them, but I think they have had a very notable run this season of not putting teams away, where they've been comfortably the better side and have let them back into it. It's not the same as a couple of years ago, where they were winning one-score games in a way that felt unsustainable and disproportionate.
They're much better. Like, just let me start with it. They're much better than they were.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. It's
2022.
not like it was a couple of years ago, where the streak of one-score wins they had felt misrepresentative of what the team was that year. It felt like that was skewing in a high end of variance that was flattering them, right? This is not the same. But the fact that they are in these one-score games when it should be a 2 or 3 score game in their favor is not a good thing. Like that streak we showed before of the point differential by quarter, the fact that they're finding a way of letting teams back into these games is not good.
I'm of the mind. I think the analyst in me thinks a lot of that is just noise. Like, I think the Vikings are very good. I think they're one of the best teams in football. Let me preface all this. I don't think they should be beating everybody 34-10.
Neither do I. But once you've put yourself in a position where you're 17 points up repeatedly, you shouldn't be going to overtime or having it as a one.
Balances back the other way. I am impressed. I mean, they did have the bounce back. I've highlighted this all year. Darnold and the Vikings have had a lot of those good bounce back drives. Like when it was 20-3, Packers score. I think it was after Darnold's interception. They score their first touchdown to go to 20-10. The Vikings come right back. Darnold this year, and we're talking plenty of Darnold in a minute here. Darnold this year has had, a red zone mistake here and there, an interception, whatever it is. He continues to bounce back from mistakes. I love that, right? And that is one of those things, the former NFL quarterbacks love that. They know you can't be perfect, but when you face adversity or when you make a mistake, how well do you bounce back from that? Darnold and the Vikings have done that really well. So they came back after giving up the first touchdown. They come back with a touchdown drive to go up 27-10. Yes, the Packers crept back into it. They score a touchdown. They do the early go for 2, which that was when Greg Olsen may have been subtweeting his former broadcast partner, Kevin Burkhardt, and Tom Brady, who had no idea why the Packers were going for 2 to make it a 9-point game, when the analytics say, hey, go for 2 early. You increase your win probability. If you get to that point when you're down 2 instead of being down 3, game-winning field goal opportunity, the Packers were almost in that situation. So the Packers crept back into it late, but still impressed with how the Vikings handled that first, attack by the Packers trying to come back in the game.
Yeah, no, they definitely bounced back, particularly that drive where Darnold threw the interception, the big return. They give up a touchdown there. That definitely could have started the rot. But the Vikings' next drive, they answered extremely well. And that was definitely a really good answer. And then obviously right after everything, it kind of collapsed and they really needed a drive just to stay alive as opposed to giving Green Bay another chance. You know, it's a 2-point game now. You need a couple first downs to ice the game. If you have to kick it away, now maybe you do screw it up and lose the game complete. Then they made a couple of big plays. You know, Darnold hits Justin Jefferson with an amazing pass on that over route, that drag route across the middle. Perfect ball location, perfect play by Jefferson. Really tight coverage. Could have been called, I think, pass interference a couple of times during that. Got most of the first down, and then the first down to Cam Akers the next play on the sort of busted coverage by the Packers. And Cam Akers almost screwed that up. Thought for a second he was going to fall and not actually catch the pass that was dropping by his feet.
Babied it, right?
Yeah, like it was falling short of him, but he sort of turned all the way and was falling backwards as he tried to catch it. It's like it looked for a second like he was screwing that up.
So that drive you're describing, and when teams screw this up, it stands out. When they execute it, sometimes we don't always highlight it enough. The Vikings are up 2 with 2:18 left, and the Packers have, 2 timeouts? Like, you need a first down here, multiple first downs. And Brady kept saying, you got to get your best guys involved, And they go bootleg, get the ball to C.J. Ham in the flat for 13. Boom, first down. Still need one more first down. And this is where teams, a lot of times, they go run, punt, and give other teams opportunities. But that second down play, Akers loses 1 yard on the first down carry after the 2-minute warning. Darnold hits Justin Jefferson on that 9 yards on 2nd and 11. That was just a massive play. And then they, get the pass to Akers to convert the 3rd and 2 to seal the game. Like, that was huge by Minnesota. Again, teams screw that up a lot. And before you know it, it's like, wow, the Packers are driving for a game-winning field goal opportunity here. And then credit Darnold and the Vikings for not letting them do it. That second down pass to Jefferson into that tight window, Darnold is absolutely fearless when making those throws, even with the game on the line. Yeah, I mean, critically on that drive, Minnesota was willing to pass the ball. Like, a lot of times you see teams in that situation, again, that run kick, right? Like, we're not going to risk stopping the clock. We're going to try and pick up the first down by just running the ball. The Vikings came out and they were like, no, we need the first down. Time is kind of irrelevant. We need to end the game, so we need to pass the ball. There aren't that many teams that are happy to do that. Did you see, I think it was maybe Nate Tice posted a screenshot of a text message. He said, this is from a McVay disciple. Right before the C.J. Ham play, he goes, first down, he goes, KOC is going to be aggressive. First play bootleg. And that's what they ran. I want to circle back to Darnold in a minute here. The sequence at the end of the half ended up being huge. The reason why I said it wasn't dominant early, it was a back and forth defensive battle the first, quarter and a half, basically. And it's 10-3 Minnesota. They got a field goal. So it's just 10-3 going into the half. Minnesota's driving. They try a 55-yard field goal and miss. And then, offsides is called on the great Edgerrin Cooper, who's outstanding overall. 4 tackles for loss, I think. Yeah. Dude is an absolute, I mean, he might be all over the place in coverage. He's an absolute jackhammer against the run. Love him. But he's called offsides. There's no good view of him being offsides whatsoever. So I don't really know if he was. There's a top-down camera angle that's come out. Where his helmet's like this close, or is he legit in the neutral zone? It doesn't look like anybody is in the neutral zone. Like, he was moving. So that was one where, they're all in the 4-point stance kind of trying to getting ready. And there's like some shuffling, but I don't think anybody got into the neutral zone. So essentially they call that. Minnesota missed the field goal. They have another shot at it, hit the 50-yarder. That puts an extra 3 points on right before the half. And obviously they win by 2. Now game flow changes and this and that, but that is a massive 3-point swing there just before the half in favor of the Vikings. No, it was. I mean, it's a big deal, particularly, again, for a kicker. Like, the kicker missed a couple of kicks in the game. Now, one of them was from way down. But not necessarily the most reliable kicker in the game. That was a big difference. I think you're right. Like, it's easy to say it was a 2-point margin of victory and that was a 3-point play. Ergo,
that play determined the game. But this was at a time when Minnesota was comfortably in charge, way ahead. Maybe if they don't get that extra 3 points, they don't collapse a 14-point margin of victory. And in fact, they put another 2 or 3 scores on the board and they do go away. Like, who knows? But yeah, it ended up being a significant differentiator in a game that got that close by the end of it.
And then just to rave about Sam Darnold again. Incredible story. Finishes 33 of 43 for 377, 3 touchdowns. And again, that one interception helped Green Bay get back into the game. That was his only real disastrous mistake, I think, in this one. Got Justin Jefferson involved in the second half. It started slow. They didn't get Jefferson involved early. He didn't have his first catch till the middle of the second quarter. But you just see the difficulty that teams have in stopping this Minnesota passing attack. Jordan Addison had 6 catches for 69 yards and a score. T.J. Hawkinson had 5 catches. Jalen Naylor had that beautiful 31-yard touchdown. Really well designed. You could see coverage going to Jefferson.
Gravity.
And Darnold just not forcing it, right? You could see him making those good decisions. Just really impressive patience but aggressiveness all at the same time, I think, from Darnold. That's the part. There was some, as Green Bay was coming back into the game, like Minnesota stays aggressive. Darnold continues to throw the ball down the field, maybe too dangerously at times when you're playing with a lead, and maybe that's part of this whole thing. But I love it, man. They have the horses who are tough to cover, the trio of Jefferson, Addison, and Hawkinson, and then you throw Naylor and his deep speed in there and what they've done in the red zone and with down the field with him. They are so tough to cover. And Darnold, again, fearless is the right word, amnesia after bad plays. I love the way he's played this year, and he stepped up again in this game in a time where Packers this week, Lions next week, playoffs. I mean, there's so much on the line, and Darnold keeps coming through.
That play, the touchdown to Naylor, I think it was a great example of that, the impact that Jefferson can have without catching the ball. Like, that was a perfect example of the kind of gravity of that elite number 1 receiver and what he can do to a secondary, because that's a throw that theoretically shouldn't be there. And then it only is there because the safety on that side is so concerned with Jefferson that he's basically taken himself out of the deep half of the field. And so that's an area that Naylor can then run into and be wide the hell open in the end zone. Jefferson's impacting the game all the time, even if he's not putting up, monster numbers. And that's true for, a lot of these elite top-end number 1 receivers. I think part of what we talked about before, Kevin O'Connell's ability to kind of rewire quarterbacks and, change the way Kirk Cousins played the game. Maybe it's not going to work every time, but like that aggressiveness is helping the Vikings. And I think it's part of why they win a lot of these 1-score games, because he is aggressive and he's going to throw the ball as opposed to run, kick and put the game in Green Bay's hands again. Like, a lot of coaches would have done that, or they'd have run at least 2 times, and then we'd have had a decision about, are we going to pass on 3rd down? Are we going to risk the pass, or are we going to run the ball again? Like, that's the decision they're making, where he's out here going, we're going to pass play 1. We're not going to run the ball. We're going to open with the pass. I think that's a big part of why they win these 1-score games, and maybe it won't work every playoff game, but I think it gives them an edge that doesn't exist for some other coaches.
Yeah, I mean, Kevin O'Connell continues. I tweeted out a couple weeks ago, if you look at the without Kevin O'Connell, Sam Darnold's career clearly rejuvenated. Kirk Cousins' winning percentage without Kevin O'Connell. I mean, there's something to him and his play calling. I saw Dan O. I didn't watch Dan O's video, but raving about the game plan and the specific, some of the specifics in there. Can't say enough good things about Kevin O'Connell, and I think regardless of what happens next week, maybe he's the coach of the year, given everything that's happened with the Vikings sitting here at 14-2. I wanted to highlight Darnold's other touchdown too to Addison. I mean, the Naylor one was like good design. You read the safety and you get the ball out there, nice throw. The second one to Addison, though, like third read, footwork, pocket movement, pinpoint, just a beautiful throw from Sam Darnold, and continues to do that week after week. We brought this up on the show before. I said, is Sam Darnold the best bridge quarterback of all time? I'm saying that, again, not from like what is he right now. I'm saying the Vikings signed him, like what's his contract, $10 million? Yeah. They signed him as a bridge quarterback. Is this the best one-year performance for a guy who was signed as a bridge from Kirk Cousins, old guy, to the rookie, right? They signed him as a hedge just in case going into the draft. People brought up Drew Brees, which might be the guy. Drew Brees bridging the Chargers to Phillip Rivers, right? Because he started the first year after Phillip Rivers.
He wasn't a bridge, though.
But he kind of was. Like, they drafted Phillip Rivers while they still had Drew Brees, and they
they drafted Phillip Rivers because Drew Brees hadn't worked out. Like, Drew Brees was a failed
But then
rookie.
But I'm saying the effectiveness in the bridge quarterback year. John Kitna, by the way, had a really nice bridge quarterback year to Carson Palmer. But I want to bring our friend Matthew Collar on Wednesday to maybe discuss that. But we've also seen this in recent years. Geno Smith, Baker Mayfield as
Baker's
bridge type of quarterbacks, right?
Baker's the other obvious one where he signs for $4 million to bridge presumably to the next guy that wasn't even on the roster yet, and actually it turns out he's the guy. There's no way Drew Brees qualifies as a bridge quarterback. He was just still in the job because they hadn't gotten rid of him.
He was
yet.
still there. We'd have to define bridge quarterback, a guy that was signed to bridge the gap, right? Signed to be a bridge. Just incredible. And again, I'm not diminishing the way Darnold's playing. I'm going and saying the mentality when you brought him in, like
the purpose of him was a bridge.
Kwesi and KOC were like, oh man, we're going to get 40 touchdowns and 14 wins out of Darnold this year. We'll just pay him $10 million for that. They did not expect this.
It is hilarious, though, that the 2022 Carolina Panthers quarterback room has now thrown for 74 touchdowns this season.
It is wild.
None of which are for the Panthers.
It was a fun story at the time because it's two class of 2018 quarterbacks. Baker goes number 1. Darnold goes number 3.
Reunited.
The 2018 quarterback class is now Allen and Lamar, both competing for the MVP, and Baker Mayfield and Sam Darnold definitely going to the playoffs, potentially winning both of their divisions and balling out.
It's now 4 guys playing really well and Josh Rosen.
Poor Josh Rosen.
Yeah, who's not in the league anymore.
Get Rosen back out here.
Who's in like the Wharton School, I think. He's like a business major.
He's doing well too.
Right.
Good for Josh.
Well, I mean, who knows? But he's back in college as opposed to playing football.
What if he has a hot tub in his dorm still? Anyway, so impressed by Minnesota. There might be something to what you're saying. Like, their defense was in control early on, and Packers had a short field after the interception, so that's part of it. But yeah, there is, Packers are also a good team, right? Like
but this is twice.
Like it was supposed to be.
It was a
closer game.
Yeah, but it was a repeat of the last game. Like the last game they played, and it was more emphatic the first time. But Minnesota annihilated the Packers the first time they played for most of the game, and then it's such a big lead. Green Bay starts slinging the ball all over the field. They start the comeback. And at some point, the garbage timey comeback actually becomes serious. You know what I mean? Like it doesn't really matter if they're putting some points up. We got a big lead. But then at some point, it's like, actually, this is getting kind of uncomfortable now. And they made it really close by the end. This never got that out of control. Like, it wasn't that emphatic. But that's 2 games against Green Bay that's happened. It's 1 game against Chicago where they should have been completely out of sight. That game went to overtime. There's a lot of games now where Minnesota should have won more comfortably than they've won. And, okay, they've won them. Like, that's the bottom line. That's the thing that matters. But the reason you bring this sort of stuff up is once you make the postseason, the bar gets higher, right? That's the whole point when you analyze, Buffalo. Everything you sort of say about Buffalo is with regards to the postseason and grading on a curve of can you beat Kansas City in January. Same thing with Minnesota. Like, they are now vying for the number 1 seed. The next game against Detroit is a fantastic matchup. Should be phenomenal. One of the games of the season based off what's on the line. But this is now the standard. This is where the bar is. Like, can you beat all these teams one after another in the playoffs? And this type of thing, like blowing 17-point leads, almost blowing 17-point leads.
Didn't all the way.
Right. It's not a good thing.
So we're going to have much more on Vikings-Lions on the Wednesday show. We've got our friend Matthew Collar from Purple Insider, writer of the PFF book. We've been friends with him through the years. He's been friendly to the show. So we're going to get the Vikings perspective from Collar heading into next week's showdown on Sunday Night Football. And then Tim Twentyman from the Detroit Lions beat, talking Lions. Tonight's Lions-49ers game does not matter as far as the seeding goes. It's still a battle for the number 1 seed. Lions-Vikings, Sunday Night Football next week. The Lions will be playing the Niners tonight, though, on Monday Night Football. And knowing Dan Campbell, it's not like he's going to take a week off Got to get some reps in to be ready for the battle.
Though it is interesting tonight, though, that literally nothing is on the line for Detroit.
Yeah.
Nothing at all. Like, usually that results in teams resting starters in Week 18. This is actually a weird, maybe unprecedented scenario where nothing is on the line today.
But it's all on the line.
But everything's on the line next week.
And here's what's on the line. Number 1 seed or first round road game, right? So you're either, if you're the Lions or the Vikings, you're either getting the home field advantage throughout the playoffs and a bye, or you're going to likely Tampa Bay to play the Bucs in the first round. That's what's on the line next week, Sunday Night Football, Vikings and Lions. Mm-hmm. So should be great. So we'll talk more about that on Wednesday with Tim and with Matthew Collar. And anything else?
No.
On that game. You see the link below.
You see it?
athletelogos.com, collections. Check the mic. Go check it out. Get your gear. Hit the subscribe button. Did we get the subscribe button up there? Were we supposed to drop? Did I miss that? Did I miss the cue earlier?
For more on the screen.
For more subscribe button.
It's a giant mess.
I missed the cue earlier. Hit the subscribe. We appreciate everybody for saying, look at that. Click the button to subscribe. Appreciate everybody that's already done that. Continue to join us. Because the offseason, we're almost to the fun part here. You think the games are fun? The offseason is really fun here on Check the Mic. So
you think football's fun? Wait till no football.
Wait till we talk about the hypothetical football and all the moves. Team building season right around the corner here. All right, thanks to everybody for tuning in. Enjoy the football tonight, and then we'll see you again on Wednesday with more Check the Mic.